see my credit card bills. It's tough to find the drive. I can't get through to the help center. On the world's end, why should people who are working call the call center when it's only open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday? There's no doubt that the lines are long at lunchtime. I'm still signed up for a service, though, so I should be okay. In other words, the call center will call you if the monthly amount is more than $10,000. You're not wrong when you say that this confidence that everything will be okay has made me less likely to call the call center. But shopping online takes my mind off of work worries. When I opened the package and saw the package inside, I felt better, but only for a short time. I'm at home. As soon as I opened the door to the living room, my mood went from good to bad. There are socks on the ground and empty cans on the table. There was a phone and a sweater on the couch. No, is that my husband in a sweatshirt? Yes, my husband doesn't clean the house at all when he gets home. Instead, he is purposely destroying the house. I point my phone at the couch and say, "Hey, socks and empty cans." This is what I get. It's just a small thing to throw away and wash. Don't be so mad. You might do it. You could do it if you get home early. Why don't you clean the house or make me dinner? He said the next thing when I said S and say, I'm so tired when I get home. I also have to deal with the store's lunch bag. I'm tired too. I said with a shrug, if you don't clean the house, you should work and do the work or the chores, whichever you like better. Oh, please be quiet. I understand. And the fact that he said it twice showed that he wasn't feeling it. I gave my husband a mean look. My husband looked at his phone the whole time he left the living room and didn't even notice how I felt. It's not fair that I do more chores and work than he does. Is that a bad thought? I don't think so. But I'm not sure if I went too far. Because my husband is sometimes crazy, I was afraid he would get stubborn and make the house even messier. But contrary to what I thought, what I said that day seems to have made a difference. Yes, my husband has been coming home late ever since, even on days when I got home before him. He began to show up. It looks like he was working extra hours. He must have changed his mind. Because I was so happy, I worked harder than ever on my tasks. My husband is busy, so I have to clean the house. I didn't think about the fact that my husband was doing that at the time. Yes, it's Christopher's room. He hasn't cleaned it in a while, and that day I got home before my husband did. It had been a while since I had been in his room. As expected, there were a lot of empty bottles and cans lying around. Throw this stuff away. Oh, even on the bed. Then I looked at the bed and thought, what is this? There was a package wrapped in gift wrap. That bag was my favorite brand. I had to shine a light on it because I couldn't see it well. Oh, could it be my birthday present? Yes, my birthday was the following week, even though it hurt. I chose to act like I hadn't seen the package and leave it alone. But on my long-awaited birthday, the box never showed up. Hey, do you know what day it is today? Oh, it's your birthday, right? Yes. Did you forget? No, I remember, she said. Aren't you happy about something? Didn't I give it to you last year? What did you do? You know, you're old enough to be honored. My husband spit that out without a care in the world and went to his room. Then what do you mean? It was that box that made me feel uneasy from that day on. Right then, something took place. My husband said all of a sudden, "This is it. I'm going on a work trip to another country next week." What? A business trip to another country? Had to raise my voice. That's not how I remember your business being. You've never been on a business trip outside of the United States, let alone within the country, have you? Then my husband said, they gave me this assignment because I've been doing well and deserve it. Oh, you mean? He told me I could believe him if I hadn't seen the box, but I couldn't accept what my husband said at that time. I was scared to go into his room on the day of his business trip after seeing him off early in the morning. I then checked under the bed. There wasn't a package there. I was sure. This isn't a business trip abroad, right? I was able to move my heavy body to work with this feeling in my heart. I was still not in a fit state to do any work, though. Several times, my hand stopped. I kept thinking about my phone and what my husband had said and done. "Hey, are you okay? What? You look like your mind is not in your body today," I asked. "Oh, yeah. I just didn't get enough sleep." As I made this light-hearted excuse, my phone started shaking. On the screen, a strange number was shown. It's not often that I answer a call from a number I don't know, but I had a bad feeling about this one, and did. "I'm sorry. I need to go for a while." "Yes, ma'am." I took the phone outside and hit the answer button. It was the credit card company's call center. I kept telling myself, "Oh no, it's not my husband, and oh well. I need to give out my password," and a lot of other things were all going through my mind at the same time. What the heck was the job requirement? The person who answered the phone gave me the answer right then and there. "This is our debt protection service calling because you have settled more than $10,000. $10,000. I was shocked by what I heard, but what the operator said next made me hold my breath even more. "Yes, it costs $30,000, I said. "That's not possible." "Wait a second." I quickly went back to work and looked in my wallet. It was no longer there. "That's the card I meant to put there," she said. I put my phone back in my ear. "Pardon me, may I halt that transaction?" "Yes. I think it's still true, so you can stop it." Thank goodness. It made me feel a little better. No, that's not the end of it. I kept going. "And please take care of the stolen card. Right now, I don't have my card with me." I said, "Yes, sir, I will do it right away." Even though I didn't understand, I did what the operator asked and was able to finish the process. I then hung up the phone. The heartbeat in my chest didn't stop for a while after I took the phone call. "I'm sorry, I'm not ready to talk. I'm not able to work. I'm sorry, but I need to go early." It seems my credit card was stolen and almost misused, and I've got a lot of things to deal with. I got off track and called my boss. I had a lot of worry at work, and my boss was okay with me leaving for the day. I grabbed the train quickly, and when I looked at my phone, I saw that my husband had called me a million times. It was like he was saying he was the bad guy. I ran home quickly. I quickly took off my shoes, set down my bag, and went to my husband's room. It was on his desk, so I opened it up and looked at the search history. The first thing on the list that caught my eye was a luxury cruise and a travel plan for two. I wasn't asked to go to that event. I looked at the destination and was sure it was the work trip my husband had talked about. He could no longer call it a work trip. I looked through my old emails. That's it. The name of the person is written there. Mario. What the heck is this woman? I was going to hit the keyboard out of anger, but instead I looked at what I thought was proof in a rough way. My phone wouldn't stop ringing while I checked. Oh my God, shut up. Oh yes, and while I'm at it, I'll use the password I got from the call center earlier to check my credit card usage history. I went to my page and looked through my records of uses. What is it? As I scrolled through, my mouth kept getting wider and wider. I forgot about a payment. After that, the money was paid for that brand of bag. Yes, it all made sense. In short, Christopher paid off his mistress Rio with my credit card and even took a trip abroad that he said was for work. Oh no, I don't want to boo. After several calls, I finally picked up the phone with all my might. What? You finally picked up after calling over and over. The credit card doesn't work. When my husband spoke, he was already talking about the card. Whose? When I asked him directly, he mumbled. You ask whose? Yes, but I don't have a credit card. That is, you took my credit card, right? My husband got antsy while I worked. No, that's not theft. I took it from someone. When you're abroad, it's easier to use than cash. When I'm on work trips, I use it for many things. Work trips. That's correct. What if it gets in the way of my work? It was meant to look like my husband was on a work trip, but I told him what I meant. What about a luxury cruise? What? Why do you want to know that? Well, that's business entertainment. A fun time for Rio? Why do you need to talk about Rio? Was she happy with the designer bag? What are you going to say? Did you just call Rio in a nice way? Do you really want to act like you don't know her? What? What do you want to say? I understand everything. I know that you tried to spend $30,000 on a luxury cruise and a vacation package for couples. I also know that you have been using my credit card to pay Rio a lot of money. My husband said twice, as if he wanted to start over. I understand. After I told him what I said. I'm sorry I cheated. I'm sorry, but I can't go home until you activate the credit card. Why are you acting that way? Do you think it will go away if you just say sorry and admit it? And friend, please spend the rest of your life at your resort. My husband was about to say something, but I hung up the phone instead. The phone started booing right away and kept booing. I turned off the call because it was too loud and making me crazy. Finally, the email said that the return trip would be at noon 3 days later. I called the company right away and decided that I would finish everything in 3 days. As a first step, I had to get everything out of the house. It was the second day that I told my in-laws what happened. Took the divorce papers and my husband's computer with me. When my in-laws saw my story and all the proof, they were angry. They said they were sorry and promised to get a divorce, pay me $113,000 in alimony, and return the money he had spent. Then, in no time, it was time for my husband to go back to Japan. I got a call early that evening from my in-laws telling me that our divorce papers had been received safely. To my surprise, my ex-husband had only taken the credit card and not any other money. The woman had given him $30,000 instead. As you might expect, she was very angry. She changed her ticket without permission before the return date and went back to Japan before him. I asked myself why she didn't just take the plane ticket and visa from my ex-husband and leave for Japan. While I was listening to the story, I thought about how when my ex-husband got back to Japan, my things were gone from my house and my phone wouldn't connect. So he ran to my in-laws' house. He got in a lot of trouble there and had to write divorce papers. In other news, the woman is now also asking for her $30,000 back, and the ex-husband is rolling his eyes up into his head. After he paid them back once, they made him live like a junior high school student with a 20-hour curfew while they watched over him until he paid the whole amount back. I finally made a $9,000 claim against the cheating wife after getting information from my in-laws about what had happened and how to reach them. This ended the problem. When I went back to work the next day, many of my bosses and coworkers were worried and called me. Hey, are you okay? I'll listen to the story if it's okay with you. Say thank you. I'm thankful to work for such a friendly company. Every once in a while, I'll buy you a drink. Let's get a drink. It's really just a game of whining. Thanks a lot. As I drank the beer, I poured all of the past into the center of my mind. I love it. From now on, it looks like only good things will happen. Yes, that's right. Haley.
Joshua's company's president will be here in an hour. My daughter-in-law Rachel's shrill voice echoed through the house, more piercing than usual. The sharpness of her tone made me wince. Hey, what are you daydreaming for? Clean up quickly and prepare some coffee. Rachel, treating me like a maid, rushed me around as we prepared for the big event of Joshua's company's president coming to our house. Clean up faster, maid. Even my grandson Cody barked orders at me in a harsh tone. Rachel, who never does any housework, was desperately ordering me around to avoid any embarrassment in front of the president, but she could at least do the cleaning herself. And, to be honest, about this president, I sighed deeply in my mind. Neither Rachel nor Joshua, who was changing into his suit in the bedroom, knew the truth. They had no idea who the president really was. I told Rachel, "I'm going to buy some snacks," and left the house. Thinking about what was about to happen made my heart race with excitement. They were all in for a big surprise. Leaving the three of them in the dark, I chuckled to myself. My name is Elizabeth. I'm 63 years old and still working at ABC Corporation, a trading company, but due to various circumstances, I live as a housewife at home. After Joshua moved out, I lived alone with my husband William, but a year ago, William had an accident that injured his leg, and now he's in a care facility. I offered to take care of him at home, but William insisted he didn't want to be a burden, so he chose to go to the facility himself. Knowing it was William's clumsy way of being considerate, I accepted his decision. So, a year ago, I started living alone, but in reality, I was only alone for about 3 months. Because 3 months after taking William to the care facility, Joshua, Rachel, and Cody moved in with me. And it is this family of my son that has disrupted my life now. Why did I end up living with them, and what have they done to me? Let me explain step by step. It all started with a phone call from Joshua. After visiting William at the care facility, I was relaxing at home when Joshua called. "Hey, Mom? We're moving in with you starting tomorrow." "What? What do you mean?" I was shocked by his words. Suddenly talking about moving in together? Joshua had always been rebellious and never listened to anything I said. The idea of him wanting to live with me was suspicious. He must have some sort of scheme in mind. Just what it sounds like. "Rachel, Cody, and I are moving in with you tomorrow. Oh, and by the way, I'm looking for a job right now. If you know of any good ones, let me know. I quit my job yesterday. But then again, you haven't had any significant jobs yourself, so I doubt you would know." I couldn't believe the nerve of him. Not only was he forcing his way into my home, but he also insulted me in the process. The fact that Joshua was job hunting again was another red flag. Ever since graduating high school, he had bounced from one job to another: construction, factories, gas stations, you name it. Nothing ever lasted long. He'd quit as soon as he got bored or faced any difficulties. However, he had managed to stay with a mid-sized real estate company for the past 3 years, which was a record for him. And now he was job hunting again? What on earth did he do this time? It was frustrating to see him like this at the age of 35. Whether he quit or got fired, he wasn't in any position to belittle others about their careers. Trying to stay calm, I attempted to reason with him. "Suddenly moving in together is a bit much. Could you at least give me a week?" "Sorry, but it's already decided. See you tomorrow." He hung up without listening to a word I said. What on earth is he thinking? As a mother, I felt pathetic for not being able to guide my son better. But Joshua had always been a handful, causing trouble for both William and me over the years. The next day, Joshua, Rachel, and Cody arrived at my doorstep. "We're here." "Wow, this place is still as cramped as ever," Rachel said, barging in. "I want the biggest room," Cody demanded. They were as rude as ever. And I hadn't seen them in about a year. Cody, only 10 years old, already had a sharp tongue, clearly inherited from his parents. Sighing, I prepared some tea for the three of them. "I don't want tea." "Do you have juice?" Cody complained. "Sorry, I wasn't expecting you, so this is all I have," I replied. "Make sure you have juice by tomorrow," Joshua said dismissively. They had barely arrived, and their attitude was already unbearable. I sighed deeply. "From today, you'll need to cook for 3 more people. Also, we're all busy, so you'll handle all the housework, right? You're a housewife, after all." "Wait a minute. I do work a little, so we should share the chores," I protested. "No way. Rachel's terrible at housework, and we had a maid until yesterday. So, it's all on you." "Thanks." Joshua said this and went upstairs to his old room on the 2nd floor. Rachel and Cody followed him. I wondered what would become of my peaceful days. The future seemed bleak, and I shivered at the thought. Then the truly hellish life with my son's family began. Joshua, having quit his job, stayed holed up in his room all day. Cody at least went to elementary school, but even Rachel, who was supposed to be a housewife, stayed in the room with Joshua. When they finally came down to the living room, it was only to grab snacks and drinks. They were like parasites, merely living in my house, and it gave me a headache. My job at ABC Corporation allowed for flexible hours, but doing laundry for the suddenly increased family members and cooking meals for 4 people at once was quite a task. However, when I was exhausted and resting, Rachel would glare at me and command, "Hey, why are you resting? You're a housewife, aren't you? Do your job properly?" As if she wasn't a housewife herself. I claimed to Joshua and Rachel that I was a housewife, but I also had a part-time job. Despite this, Rachel kept criticizing me without mentioning anything about herself, which was infuriating. "Rachel, you're a housewife too, aren't you? If you're not good at housework, I can teach you, so let's share the chores together," I suggested to Rachel. However, Rachel only glared at me even more irritably and said, "Huh? Why should I take orders from someone like you? I'm tired from raising a child. Just do the housework." She treated me like a maid. I wondered how such an insolent adult could come to be, and I was troubled by it. Realizing that it was useless to say anything to Rachel, I decided to at least get Joshua to work. I negotiated with the HR department and arranged for Joshua to work at ABC Corporation. It was an exceptional case, but I coached Joshua on what to say during the interview, and he successfully got the job. Joshua was assigned to the sales department and finally escaped his jobless life. By the way, Joshua doesn't know that I work at ABC Corporation. When introducing the job, I told him that a friend of mine worked there and suggested he apply. Joshua, who was about to start job hunting, saw it as an unexpected opportunity and quickly agreed to the interview. ABC Corporation's new employee training is quite thorough, so even Joshua should be able to manage the work reasonably well. Though I couldn't do much about Rachel, I was glad that Joshua had secured a job and hoped he would at least lead a proper life. However, my life didn't change. In fact, with Joshua out of the house for work, Rachel took advantage and started pushing more tasks onto me. Household chores were manageable as they were part of my daily routine, but she even began to impose her shopping errands on me, saying, "Go buy the cake that comes out today." I resisted, saying, "Shouldn't you be the one to go?" "Huh?" But Rachel only responded with a defiant, "Huh? What's the problem? You have a part-time job today, right? It won't hurt to stop by the store. Hurry up and buy it." She always found convenient excuses to get me to do things for her. Rachel genuinely believed I only worked part-time. When I had to leave for work, I often used the excuse of visiting William for his care. While I did visit him sometimes, it wasn't always the truth. But I wanted to keep my job at ABC Corporation a secret for as long as possible. Rachel constantly exploited my position and kept assigning me chores, making my life increasingly unbearable within just a month of their arrival. Every time I thought about how many more years this situation might last, my mood turned dark. I sighed deeply and went out to buy the cake. 9 months passed, and now here we are. Despite my efforts, Joshua and Rachel continued treating me like a housemaid, and Cody ordered me around to fetch his snacks. Over time, I developed a thicker skin and learned to ignore their rude comments. But thinking about enduring this for years to come cast a shadow over my heart. In any case, I decided to kill my emotions and avoid useless resistance at home. I focused on smoothly managing both my job and household chores. My routine took an unexpected turn one Friday morning. As I arrived at work, I noticed the office was unusually busy, with people hurrying around. Curious about what was happening, I soon discovered the reason. Joshua, who worked at ABC Corporation, had been rude to an important client, causing a significant issue. He worked in the sales department and had been aggressively pushing new products to our clients. That, in itself, wasn't the problem. But when the client refused to make a purchase, Joshua's demeanor changed drastically.
"Do you think you have the right to say no?"
He yelled at them. Naturally, the client was furious and declared they would no longer do business with ABC Corporation. Moreover, Joshua had also fabricated fake contracts for new clients, selling products at prices higher than the standard rate. Normally, payments were made via bank transfer, but Joshua had cunningly insisted on cash-only transactions, pocketing the difference between the inflated prices and the actual cost, while depositing the remaining amount into ABC Corporation's accounts. When the finance department quickly caught on and questioned Joshua, he confessed to everything. Joshua was now out apologizing to the clients. Hearing about this series of scandals gave me a terrible headache. Since I had personally advocated for Joshua's hiring, I felt responsible for his misconduct. I apologized to all the employees who were handling the fallout and declared that appropriate measures would be taken against Joshua. After a long and exhausting day, I finally returned home at 9 p.m. Normally, I would be back by 7 p.m., so this was quite late. As soon as I walked through the door, a furious Rachel stormed out of the living room.
"Hey, old hag! Where have you been? We've been starving here!"
she yelled.
"I'm so hungry I can't stand it. Hurry up and make dinner,"
Cody added, just as aggressively. I sighed once again. If they were so hungry, they could have made something for themselves. Even Rachel, who wasn't good at cooking, could at least prepare some spaghetti. But instead, they chose to wait for me to return, only to demand that I cook immediately, nothing short of harassment. All right. I'll start making dinner now. Just wait a bit," I said. "Make it quick," Rachel snapped. Despite having spent the entire day dealing with company-wide complaints, Rachel showed no consideration and continued to demand that I prepare dinner. I couldn't help but think she was the real complainer here. In the end, I quickly whipped up some spaghetti for Rachel and Cody. Exhausted, I didn't have the energy to eat myself, so I completed the minimum necessary household chores and went straight to bed. Joshua had not yet returned home. I spent the moments before sleep contemplating what to do about Joshua's situation at the company. The next morning, I had made up my mind about how to handle Joshua. I waited until he was awake and sent him an email. Since he still didn't know I worked at ABC Corporation, Receiving an email from someone he didn't recognize on a weekend likely shook him. The email stated that a company representative would visit our home on Monday evening. Joshua seemed to understand the gravity of the situation after reading the email. He wore a troubled expression for the rest of the weekend. Monday arrived. I left work early, coming home well before usual. Rachel, who seemed to have slept in until noon, came down to the living room around 3 p.m. Joshua was with her. Cody had just returned from elementary school, so the entire family was gathered at home. Rachel, looking alarmed, rushed over to me as I sipped my coffee in the living room.
The president of Joshua's company is coming in an hour.
Rachel's voice, sharper than usual, echoed through the room. I winced at the piercing sound.
Why are you just sitting there? Start cleaning up. Prepare some coffee too.
Rachel, treating me like a maid, was frantic about the impending visit of the company president.
Get cleaning, housekeeper.
Even Cody chimed in with a harsh command. Rachel, who never did any housework herself, was desperately ordering me around to avoid any embarrassment in front of the president. But she could easily handle the cleaning herself. Besides, who exactly was this president? I sighed deeply inside. Neither Rachel nor Joshua, who was upstairs changing into a suit, knew the truth. They had no idea who the president was.
What could it be about? Maybe Joshua's promotion? I heard you recently secured a new contract worth several $100,000 from a new client.
Oh, Rachel said, looking thrilled, though I wondered where she got that information. Joshua, on the other hand, seemed to sense what was about to happen. He stood frozen, pale with worry. A promotion would be wonderful. If the president is coming all the way here, it must be something big.
So hurry up and clean, old hag.
Rachel turned back to me, urging me to prepare for the president's visit, still under the assumption that Joshua was being praised. Suppressing my exasperation, I told Rachel,
I'm going to buy some snacks.
And left the house. The thought of what was about to unfold made my heart race. They were all in for a surprise. Leaving the clueless trio behind, I chuckled to myself. Of course, I had no intention of buying any sweets after leaving the house. Instead, I retrieved a suit I had stashed in a nearby locker and changed in a restroom. Dressed in my usual work attire, I spent an hour outside before heading back home. When I rang the doorbell,
Yes?
I heard Rachel's saccharine voice from inside.
Hello. Welcome.
Rachel's cheerful smile faded instantly when she saw me.
Oh, it's you, old hag. Why did you ring the doorbell? Don't be so confusing.
Rachel sneered, her usual venomous tone cutting through the air. I looked at her confidently and said,
Good afternoon. I am Elizabeth, the president of ABC Corporation.
What? Rachel stared at me, dumbfounded, as if I'd spoken in a foreign language. Joshua and Cody emerged from the living room, their faces showing their attempts to grasp the situation. ABC Corporation. President. What's going on? Joshua asked, bewildered.
It's exactly as I said. I've been keeping it a secret, but I am the president of ABC Corporation.
Huh? Joshua was the most shocked. I was the one who arranged for him to join ABC Corporation. I could only do that because I was the president. However, Joshua thought I merely referred him to a friend's company, so his surprise was understandable. Since Joshua was a child, I had worked at ABC Corporation. But Joshua never showed any interest in my job or his father William's work. He was more interested in mischief at school, hanging out with friends, and wasting time at arcades. Eventually, he started mocking me, thinking I did nothing worthwhile. So, I stopped talking about my job. If I had told them I was the president, both Joshua and Rachel would have surely tried to exploit me for money. To prevent that, I claimed to have a part-time job and kept my position a secret. ABC Corporation is a company with over 3,000 employees, and the people I usually interact with are the CEO, my secretary, and other executives. Although my name is on the company's website, Joshua apparently never looked at the company's profile page. While I felt a bit of sympathy for Joshua, who found himself in this situation unaware of who I truly was, the responsibility lay entirely with him. If he hadn't caused such trouble at work, I wouldn't need to confront him personally about his actions. It's all his own responsibility.
Sorry to surprise you, but I'm here today as the president of ABC Corporation to talk to Joshua. May I come in?
I spoke with an authoritative tone, different from my usual demeanor when following Rachel's orders. My professional aura made Joshua and Rachel comply immediately. Yes. They both responded, almost fearfully, and led me inside. I seated Joshua, Rachel, and Cody, and looked down at them as I spoke.
Today, we need to discuss Joshua's situation. Joshua, you caused a major incident at the company on Friday, didn't you? That client is one of our top 10 customers, and the damage amounts to $100,000. You didn't think you could anger such an important client and get away with it, did you?
Joshua sat with his head down, his face pale. Rachel, who had been expecting news of Joshua's promotion today, listened in shock.
Wait, what are you talking about? An incident? Today isn't about Joshua's promotion?
Rachel bombarded me with questions, clearly confused. I turned to her and explained what Joshua had done at the company.
Promotion? There's no way that would be discussed at home. If it were a promotion, it would be handled at the office. Coming to the house to talk means it's bad news. Joshua was disrespectful to a major client. The entire company was busy handling the fallout on Friday. Do you have any idea how it felt for me to apologize to everyone? And it's not just that. He also created fake contracts to overcharge new clients. After all this, did you really think he could get away with it?
Joshua trembled at my words. Rachel looked stunned, clearly not expecting to hear such things from me. Even Cody, despite being in elementary school, seemed to grasp that Joshua had done something wrong at work. "Dad, is it true?" Cody asked, seeking confirmation.
It's true. But listen, I had no choice. Those people treated me like a newbie and mocked me. They said, "We'll consider buying it once we understand the product better." I worked so hard on that presentation, and they rejected it. I got frustrated. It's their fault, not mine.
Joshua shouted, blaming the client he had insulted. Joshua was supposed to have apologized to the client on Friday. If he thought like this, his apology must have been insincere. His behavior made me feel sick. The client had shown no signs of mocking him for being a newcomer. Clients rarely buy unnecessary products. If Joshua had been more skilled in sales, he might have convinced them to buy something they didn't need at the moment. But Joshua lacked that ability. The client simply rejected his pitch, and he responded disrespectfully, making it natural for them to question his character.
As long as you blame others, you're just shifting responsibility. We can't trust someone like that with any job at our company. And forging contracts to embezzle money is absolutely unforgivable. You're 100% at fault here. Didn't you know that tampering with company funds would get you fired? The working world isn't that lenient,
I said calmly, delivering Joshua's termination. Joshua's face turned even paler as he gasped in disbelief.
No way!
He cried out.
Please! Don't fire me! If I leave ABC Corporation now, I'll have to find another job. Please, don't do this!
Joshua begged me. But his irresponsible attitude didn't sway my feelings.
It's out of the question. If I don't fire you, it sets a bad example for the other employees and clients. No matter what you say, I won't change my mind.
Realizing there was no room for argument, Joshua slumped down in despair. Seeing my resolute decision, Rachel also looked frightened and flustered. Eventually grasping the gravity of the situation, Rachel stepped forward and spoke to me.
Hey, Elizabeth, isn't there something you can do? I'm struggling here. Joshua keeps quitting jobs, and it's always me who suffers. If you're going to fire Joshua, you need to find him another job. Otherwise, I'll lose my allowance again. I'm sick of this. Please, do something.
Rachel's tearful plea was filled with self-centered concerns rather than genuine worry for Joshua. She was more afraid of how his job loss would affect her. I had plenty to say to Rachel, who had such a naive outlook.
Rachel, you've been calling me old hag all this time, and now you suddenly call me Elizabeth? The hypocrisy makes me sick. You're complaining about Joshua switching jobs, but have you ever fulfilled your own responsibilities? You're a housewife who doesn't do any housework. You just order me around, always looking down on me and criticizing everything I do. You said you'd lose your allowance, but why don't you go out and work? Cody is already in elementary school, so you have free time while he's at school, right? If you can't handle housework, why don't you work and support Joshua? You've probably only ever thought about yourself. I don't want to live with someone like you anymore,
I declared firmly to Rachel. She looked back at me, her face as pale as Joshua's.
That's not true. I do care about Joshua. He said he likes working, so I decided to stay home and support him.
Rachel blurted out a defense she must have hastily concocted. Joshua looked at her in surprise.
When did I ever say I like working? What? But you always start a new job right after quitting one. Doesn't that mean you like working?
Rachel's reasoning was convoluted, and Joshua responded with a sigh, holding his forehead.
That's because if I don't work, we'll be out on the street. Of course, I don't want to work. I envy you. You get to laze around the house all day, not doing any housework. I had to hire a maid with the money I earned. But it got harder to afford even that, so I suggested we move in with Mom. You had no idea about our situation, did you? We're practically poor. If you worked even a little, you'd have more spending money. That's...
As Joshua said, Rachel was trying to take it easy while making Joshua work. She didn't even realize how little money Joshua was bringing in. Naturally, with Joshua quitting every job within a few years, his salary would remain low. While Joshua's inability to hold a job was his own fault, Rachel's refusal to work was pure laziness.
Do you understand now how selfish you've been? Ever since you moved in, my stress levels have been through the roof. I'm done cooking for you. Leave this house immediately.
My calm but resolute tone seemed to sink in, and Joshua and Rachel screamed in despair. Let's go.
What will we do if we leave here?
Rent a cheap apartment, I guess. They imagined their future, turning pale.
I don't want to live in an old house.
Stop complaining and get out. Joshua pulled Rachel and Cody, who resisted, out of my house. He realized that further angering me, the chairwoman of ABC Corporation, would only bring more trouble. It was a wise decision. I could hear Rachel and Joshua arguing outside the front door, but I ignored it all. I am done living with my son's family. Once, I had tried to get Joshua a job at ABC Corporation, but I no longer want to do such things. Alone in the now empty room, I took a breath. From now on, I want to spend time solely for myself. I hadn't been able to visit William lately, so I decided to go see him tomorrow. Released from this turmoil, I was completely exhausted. The next day, I successfully managed to fire Joshua, and he left ABC Corporation. I apologized to all the employees for the trouble caused by Joshua, who had been with the company for only a short time, and I somehow managed to calm everyone's anger. Since then, there have been no problems at the company, and busy days have continued. Joshua, who lost his job, started looking for another one again, but no company was willing to hire him after seeing his record of being dismissed for disciplinary reasons from his previous job. Even after a year of job hunting, he couldn't find any results, and eventually, he ended up taking a part-time job at a moving company. Although it's a part-time job, moving work is mostly physical labor, and Joshua is being worked hard. He's not very strong, so he probably uses up all his energy every day, working until he's completely exhausted. Considering the misdeeds he committed while working at ABC Corporation, it's still fortunate that he has a job at all. As for Rachel, Joshua's part-time job didn't bring in enough income, so she had to start working too. Rachel, who had no experience as a working adult or even a part-time job, initially worked in customer service, but she was repeatedly fired due to her poor attitude toward customers. The job she finally landed was as a cleaner, where she had to do all the cleaning she had previously avoided. Given that Rachel didn't do any cleaning at home, she's probably suffering from back pain now. I hope she experiences the hardships of cleaning and reflects on how she used to treat me. With Joshua's family falling into such a state, Cody could no longer get toys and games as before. Now, he envies his friends who have the latest game consoles. Joshua, Rachel, and Cody should reflect on how their misdeeds towards others have come back to them. As for me, I've returned to the comfortable life of living alone, feeling like I've gone from hell back to heaven. At ABC Corporation, the employees greatly appreciated that I had the courage to let Joshua go and handled all the trouble he caused. Although it was my fault for bringing Joshua into the company in the first place, many people praised me for resolving the issue personally. Thanks to that, I can continue working comfortably as before, which is a relief. Recently, I've picked up gardening as a hobby and have been growing vegetables in the yard. I've secured some enjoyment for my old age, and I also enjoy meeting and talking with William from time to time. From now on, I want to spend my days peacefully. I can't take it anymore. Please divorce me. I pleaded desperately. It's been 15 years since my son Luke was born and I started working at my in-laws' factory. But they never paid me a salary because I was family, and I endured being treated like their maid. My father-in-law Mike refuses to change his ways, and my mother-in-law Jane constantly meddles in employee affairs. And my husband Tom, instead of stopping them, just blindly agrees that his parents are always right. When he comes home, he never helps with taking care of our young child or with any household chores. Ever since being trapped in the in-laws annex, I haven't even been allowed to visit my own parents. But if it were just that, I could still bear it. If it were only me, I could endure it. The one thing I couldn't forgive was sacrificing my son Luke. Tom declared that he would make him work at the factory as soon as he graduates high school, without even asking what he wants. Tom's reasoning is that he should start working at the factory early as the heir, just like Tom himself did in the past. But that's not what he wants at all. Does Tom intend to exploit not just my life, but him as well? When that thought hit me, my patience reached its limit. Gathering my resolve, I brought up divorce to Tom. Sipping his hot coffee, he looked down at me coldly.
Divorce, huh? Fine, I'll give you one, but you still have to keep working here.
My name is Sarah. I'm turning 45 this year. Maybe because my father was an engineer, I loved tinkering with machines since I was little, so I went to a technical college for electrical engineering. I met my current husband Tom at a meeting with a client company after I started working. There was talk of trying to outsource some parts the company used to the factory his father ran. As I kept going to the factory for those meetings, Tom and I hit it off. Tom confessed his feelings to me, and we started dating with the intention of getting married. Back then society was still very male-dominated. I thought dating someone from a client company, and a female engineer at that, wouldn't give a good impression. But contrary to my expectations, his parents accepted our relationship with a smile. I worked as a contract employee, moving between various companies. It's not something I like to boast about, but I did gain top-class technical skills. However, I had absolutely no confidence when it came to romance. So when Tom's parents accepted me, I remember feeling incredibly relieved. It was when I found out I was pregnant. A few months after we registered our marriage, my period didn't come. I went to the hospital and found out I was pregnant. When I told Tom, he spat out the coffee he had been hurriedly drinking and jumped up in joy. I quit the company I had been working at, prompted by the pregnancy. When he said he wanted me to work at his family's factory after the baby was born, I nodded without any doubts. These days there's no need to agree to quit your job, but at the time it wasn't uncommon for women to quit work after getting married to help with their husband's family business. And it's true that I wanted to support the household as a member of my in-laws' family. We quickly cleaned up the annex at my in-laws' place and started a life with just the three of us, including the child in my womb. But after giving birth to Luke, I finally realized Tom doesn't help with housework at all. Even though I became a housewife, taking care of all the chores while raising a young child was far harder than I had imagined. Even when Luke cried, he wouldn't comfort him. While I changed diapers, all he did was ask if dinner was ready yet or say he wanted to take a shower. I begged him to help out a little, but he brushed me off, saying housework and childcare are a woman's job. He started yelling that I should be able to handle at least this much even though I wasn't working. I sought help from Jane and the others when they occasionally came to check on us, but my in-laws just kept saying how cute Luke was without actually changing his diapers or playing with him. On top of that, Mike took away the savings.
The daughter-in-law's savings belong to us.
I had built up from working before marriage, saying, in this house ruled by Mike, there was no way I could demand he return the money. Thankfully, my in-laws covered the rent, utilities, and food expenses, but I had no money for myself. I had to beg Tom for an allowance just to buy clothes for our child. I gradually lost the will to go against them. Tom, who should have been my ally, either brushed me off coldly, saying it was his wife's job, or cursed at me terribly when he was in a bad mood. With a newborn Luke in my arms, I had no way to escape at the time and had no choice but to accept these circumstances. When he became old enough to go to daycare and I finally had some time to myself, my in-laws and Tom ordered me to work for free as a family employee. I pleaded to at least get paid something, even a small amount, so I could buy new clothes for my child. But Tom and his parents adamantly refused, using the excuse that the family covered my living expenses. They forced second-hand clothes on me that they claimed to have gotten from relatives, saying those were good enough for a child's clothes. I can't even begin to count how many times I've held Luke close, begging him to forgive me for not being able to buy him decent clothes. Somewhere along the way, Luke became my sole reason for living. My in-laws and Tom never lifted a finger to help with childcare. And with no way to contact my own family or money for transportation, I was utterly helpless. My only goal was to protect Luke from this demonic family and raise him right. I worked myself to the bone, putting my blood, sweat, and tears into it. Then one spring, when Luke turned 15, Tom and his parents suddenly announced they were going to remodel the house. They couldn't even pay me a proper salary for helping out his family, yet somehow they had the means to remodel the whole damn house. If they had that kind of money, they could have bought Luke nicer clothes, could have fed him better food. I pictured Luke's face, how he'd suffered in poverty since he was little. Why the sudden remodel? I asked timidly.
Tom snorted. Luke's 15 now. He can start working next year, right? It's about time he moved in with Dad and Mom to be groomed as the successor.
I could feel the blood drain from my face as Tom implied Luke wouldn't be going to college, without even asking what he wanted. I could endure it if it was just me. But now Tom was trying to dictate Luke's whole future too? The moment that realization hit, I demanded a divorce without a second thought.
I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce.
I pleaded. Tom stared down at me, expressionless, for a good half-minute before having an exaggerated sigh.
Divorce, yeah right.
He mulled it over as he sipped his coffee, then spouted the most outrageous proposal.
I'll give you a divorce, but you keep working here. It's not like anyone else would hire you anyway.
I felt dizzy. The audacity of this man. To suggest I keep working at his factory, even after divorcing him? I looked up at him, dumbfounded, only to find him leering at me with a nasty grin.
You've got to be joking. I'm more than capable of working elsewhere.
Luckily, our factory still did business with my old workplace. I even had connections there, an old colleague who'd moved up the ranks. I may not be able to get a job at the exact same company, but with my skills, he could at least introduce me to openings.
Fine, whatever. But Luke stays here. He's our successor,
Tom declared as I adamantly refused. I wanted to scream at him for spouting such nonsense. But what if Luke wanted to stay? Leaving the family home might mean a harder life than what he had now. Unlike me, if he was raised to take over, maybe Luke would never want for anything. The thought flickered across my mind. I bit my lip as Tom led me and Luke to the living room of his family's house. Luke must have sensed something was off from our tense atmosphere. He followed along in silence. What's going on at this hour? Mike greeted us with a perplexed look.
She says she wants to divorce me,
Tom announced, like it was some kind of joke. I heard Luke gasp behind me. Mike stared at us intently, scratching his fat belly. Without a word, he ushered us into the living room. Jane must have overheard. She glared at me as she silently made coffee. When did it become the norm for nothing to be placed in front of me? Usually I'd pour my own share without a peep, but today I couldn't muster the will.
Why is Sarah suddenly demanding a divorce?
Mike asked Tom, sipping his hot coffee. Mike's suffocating gaze made me want to vomit as always, but today I met it head-on instead of looking away.
She brought it up as soon as I mentioned the remodel. She must really hate the idea of living with you and Mom.
Tom's sharp words caused his parents to cast a piercing gaze in my direction. While I understood their feelings, I knew I would never truly fit in with them. Any sense of being welcomed had vanished shortly after I started working at Tom's factory. When I first voiced my opinion about the production line, Mike had flown into a rage, insisting his way was the best. But what seemed to anger him even more was that I had the audacity to persist in offering suggestions for improvement. "Keep your mouth shut, woman," he had said dismissively, and I endured his harassment for some time after that. Thinking back, that may have been the moment when my in-laws began treating me with such disdain. Although retired now, Mike still drops by the factory occasionally, claiming to be there to supervise. He comes to ensure that his methods haven't been altered in any way. The employees live in constant fear, always worried that they might become his next target. Despite knowing nothing about running a factory, Jane chimes in impulsively from time to time. The worst is when it comes to personnel matters. "That person's greeting didn't please me today," dock their pay. That one brought a gift the other day, give them a bonus. She changes the employee's treatment on a whim, depending on her mood. Even after Tom became president, this behavior continued unchecked, with Tom unquestioningly implementing his parents' decisions. For Tom, his parents' word is law. Every day, I found myself apologizing to the employees, knowing we couldn't afford to lose them. But even that was met with disapproval from my in-laws and Tom.
Please, let me divorce him.
I pleaded again, offering no explanation for my request. I had braced myself for a barrage of cruel words, but to my surprise, Mike agreed readily.
If you insist, I suppose it can't be helped. Sometimes people just aren't compatible.
As I looked up in shock, I saw him wearing the same unpleasant smirk as Tom. A chill ran down my spine.
You're free to divorce. But I won't allow Sarah to quit the factory. She'll keep working for free, as compensation.
What was he saying? Compensation? Compensation for what? What had I ever done to deserve being exploited by them like this? As I trembled, Jane gently asked Luke.
You'll stay with us, won't you, Luke? If you leave with Sarah, you'll only end up poor.
At her words, I glanced at Luke in a panic. While this place was suffocating for me, it wasn't necessarily a bad environment for Luke. He probably had no idea that Tom intended to put him to work immediately after high school. Maybe Luke would say he wanted to stay here. When Luke, who had been silent until then, finally spoke, I closed my eyes in fear, but
I'm going with Mom,
he declared firmly, without a hint of hesitation. I looked up at Luke, his words ringing in my ears. He smiled at me gently, despite the pathetic expression I must have worn, then turned a stern gaze on his grandparents and Tom.
Luke, you're the heir to this family. I won't allow you to leave,
Tom shouted, his anger erupting. Luke, what are you saying? Think this through.
Luke, who do you think raised you?
Mike bellowed, his face even redder than Tom's, spittle flying as he spoke. But Luke stood protectively in front of me and answered clearly once more.
It was Mom who raised me. Dad, who tormented her endlessly and barely lifted a finger to care for me. And you, Grandma and Grandpa, I've never once thought of you as family.
When had his back grown so broad? The one I thought I needed to protect was now protecting me. I knew it was pathetic, but I couldn't help feeling immensely happy about it. Later, I heard from the family court investigator that Tom and his parents, in a panic about losing Luke, their heir, to me, had consulted an acquaintance who was a lawyer to see if anything could be done. However, in the end, the child's opinion takes top priority when deciding which parent to live with. Especially since Luke, at 15 years old and on the cusp of adulthood, had so clearly chosen his mother, they were told it would be difficult to overturn that. Tom had given up on gaining custody of Luke and reluctantly agreed to the division of assets, but when he demanded to be paid for the work I had done at his family's home all these years,
Sarah wasn't even an employee. She was just helping out of her own accord, so there's no such thing,
he was told to the very end. Going back to the story, the day after finishing the discussion with my in-laws, I gathered the few belongings Luke and I had and returned to my parents' home that I hadn't been able to go back to for many long years. My parents were surprised by the sudden return of their daughter and the grandson they had only met when he was little, but they welcomed us warmly without saying a word. I'm sorry I couldn't come back for so long. What are you saying? If anything, I'm sorry for not noticing sooner. When I immediately explained the situation and apologized through tears, my mother cried even harder than I did and embraced Luke and me. Dinner that night was lavish. My mother and father had made so much homemade food, and it was a peaceful time that I hadn't experienced in a long while. The next day, the phone in the living room of my parents' house rang. It was Tom calling. I was about to hang up right away, but I heard him say something about an employee in a panicked voice, so I listened closely, wondering what was going on.
What happened? Was there an accident?
The first thing that came to mind was an employee accident. Had someone gotten caught in a machine? Or did something happen on their commute?
Never mind that. Just get over here now. We'll talk after,
Tom said, so I hurriedly headed to my in-laws' factory. The factory, which was usually noisy with the sound of machines running, was strangely quiet today. As I stood there wondering what was going on, Tom and his parents came running over.
You're late. What were you doing?
Mike complained right away, but I ignored him and asked again.
Never mind that. What happened? Was there an accident? Did someone get hurt? No. All the employees quit.
The words that reached my ears as I asked in a fluster were ones I never could have imagined.
Quit? All of them?
I repeated in shock. There had been absolutely no sign of that yesterday. Well, maybe one or two had gotten fed up with Mike's unreasonable demands. Or had Jane been complaining again? I could think of a few things, but it shouldn't have been enough to make everyone quit all of a sudden. As I stood there confused, he spoke with a frustrated look on his face.
It's because you left. The moment they heard Sarah was getting divorced and quitting, they all up and left too.
I felt like I was watching Tom yelling in frustration from somewhere far away. Even after retiring, Mike would butt into the management and work, and Jane would spot employees she didn't like and tell Tom to dock their pay. Tom would then reflect all of that in how he ran things. The employees had been building up more and more dissatisfaction with their outrageous attitudes over the years. For the past 15 years, it had been my role to somehow mediate and keep the peace so their anger wouldn't explode. It was within my power to do so, and even if Mike targeted an employee and yelled at me not to interfere, I would still shield them. If Jane ever glared at an employee, I would forcibly distract her. I tried my best to guide Tom, who would thoughtlessly wreak havoc on the workplace at his parents' behest, to minimize the damage as much as possible. It seems the employees had been watching me do all that. I was surprised to learn that they had unexpectedly grown fond of me. The reason I had been able to make it through those painful days was because I had Luke and the employees' smiles.
They had the nerve to say there's no point in working here if she's gone. Who do they think is paying their salaries?
I couldn't help but laugh at his indignant voice. I wonder who it was that said such a thing for my sake. The faces of the employees flashed through my mind one by one before disappearing. My in-laws must have heard my laughter because they glared at me with furious expressions. Tom immediately spoke in a commanding tone.
Listen up. These are their phone numbers. Sarah, you call them and convince them to come back.
He thrust the phone book at me, speaking as if he fully expected me to obediently comply, and I couldn't help but burst out laughing.
Why should I do that? I'm not your wife anymore, and I'm not an employee either. On top of that, you never even paid me for all the work I did.
I wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes. What were these tears for, I wonder? Tears of farewell for the Tom who was once supposed to be kind.
Let me make this clear. You didn't pay me a salary because I was family, and you never helped with the housework or childcare. You treated me like a maid. I have no reason to listen to you, and I have no intention of going back there. And I definitely have zero interest in convincing the employees to return.
After laughing for a while, I calmly informed them. Tom and his parents fell silent, likely because they never expected me to argue back to this extent. For the past 15 years, I had endured everything for Luke's sake. No matter how much they mistreated me or ignored my human dignity, I put up with it all just for him. They probably thought I was a meek daughter-in-law who would never defy them. They were stunned speechless as I resolutely stated my piece.
I've also decided to demand the back pay you owe me.
If the employees had all quit, then me requesting what I was due wouldn't harm them. I had thought it would be better to just leave quietly rather than cause trouble for any remaining employees, but it was a different story if only Tom's family would suffer for it. I firmly declared my intentions, ignored his look of shock, and left. I heard them calling out as if to stop me, but I ran away with all my might. As soon as I got home, I asked my father to put me in touch with a lawyer acquaintance of his. After explaining the situation, I decided to file a lawsuit for the unpaid wages. The diligent journal I had kept came in handy, and the records of when I worked and the daily verbal abuse from Tom and his parents were presented as compelling evidence. Additionally, one of the employees had recorded a conversation of the harassment I was subjected to. He had gone out of his way to track down my parents' home to give it to me, saying it might help with the divorce. Thanks to that, things worked out very favorably for me. I was able to demand from my in-laws a portion of the wages that should have been paid, excluding the amount past the statute of limitations, as well as damages for the mental anguish I suffered over the years. My in-laws and Tom stormed over to my parents' house yelling, but when my father threatened to call the police, they meekly left. Later, the amount I had won was deposited into my designated bank account. Having lost all their employees in an instant, my in-laws' factory could not possibly continue operating with just Mike and Tom, so it quickly shut down. It seems they used up all their savings paying me compensation and damages, as well as severance for the employees who quit. They sold their house and land, and apparently the three of them are living together in a cramped apartment. Because of the penalty fees for the company contracts, not only Tom but also his parents who were guarantors incurred payment obligations. Despite their advanced age, I heard they are working part-time jobs. They have to earn as much as possible, so they're doing physically taxing work. As for Tom, he apparently started job hunting but had only ever worked at his family's factory and lacked any common sense about society. Spoiled since childhood as the future company president, he couldn't handle being scolded by a younger boss soon after finding employment. Since then, he hasn't been able to hold down a decent job and is living off his parents, according to the lawyer who visited my in-laws. Luke and I rested at my parents' home for a while, but I was able to find a new job through my old connections. We started living just the two of us in an apartment near my workplace. My parents said I could commute from their place, but I discussed it with Luke and decided we couldn't depend on them forever at their age. Of course, unlike before, I visit whenever I have free time to make up for the 15 years we were apart. And incredibly, at my new job, I was reunited with the former employee who had recorded the harassment I received at my in-laws. When I called out to him, he looked surprised too, and we laughed about how glad we were that we were both doing well. He had always looked out for me at my in-laws' factory, and we worked together seamlessly. It wasn't long before he proposed to me. When Luke, who had sensitively noticed the change in me, interrogated me about it and I confessed, he got angry and asked why I hadn't told him sooner. It seems he remembered him too and quickly warmed up to him. Awful as my in-laws were, Luke probably still has mixed feelings about his blood-related father and grandparents. But seeing Luke and my new husband happily building model kits together, those worries quickly vanished.
All right, you two, time to eat.
I called out to them as I plated the freshly made pasta. My work and family life are almost scarily perfect. The day we can laugh off those painful times as having existed to bring us to today's happiness as a family of three is probably not too far off.
I've fallen for someone else. I want to get a divorce.
Our marriage was in ruins, and my husband, Vincent, handed me divorce papers. He often berated me for my whole attitude of our life. Without resisting, I accepted the divorce papers. I know the real reason he wanted the divorce. Fine. Here, the divorce papers. I signed and pushed the papers back at Vincent, who looked puzzled by my lack of resistance. I wasn't going to refuse the divorce. He was going to see what hell on earth looks like. After the divorce, I immediately went to a specific place. My name is Charlotte Henderson, wife of Vincent, a real estate company president. Vincent and I have been together for 10 years, and now he's confronting me with divorce papers. It all started about 6 months ago. Can't you settle down with your work? Vincent, who runs a real estate company, was rarely at home. It wasn't like this when we first married, but now his business thrived, his social commitments are increased. He was always out, using entertainment as an excuse. No family time on weekends, he was always going out alone. I spent my days at home, lonely. We didn't have children. And every time he left me at home, I blamed myself if it was because I couldn't have children. For Vincent, who loves kids, marrying me might have been a miscalculation. Our marital life faded away after 5 years. One day, I reached my limit and tried to negotiate for making some family time with Vincent. After dinner, as he was immersed in his hobbies, I tried to speak to him, but he didn't respond. Engrossed in some radio commentary.
Go, go, go. That's it. Overtake. Do it.
Vincent, fist clenched in his right hand, kept cheering passionately, completely ignoring me. It was as if I wasn't even in his sight.
What kind of marriage is this? Normally, wouldn't you notice someone standing right in front of you? Is it strange that I feel this way?
As I was lost in these sad thoughts, the game ended, and Vincent, throwing his earphones onto the sofa, began to complain.
Damn it, what's he doing? That jockey needs to get it together. I've put a lot of money on this.
It seemed Vincent was listening to a horse racing commentary. I couldn't help but wonder, horse racing over his wife's important talk?
Hey, I need to talk to you. What? Can't you see I'm not in the mood for pointless chatter right now? What, you got something important? Just get to the point then.
Vincent glared at me irritably, taking out his frustration about his loss on me. I was disappointed by his rude words and attitude. Why do I have to bear the brunt of your frustration over losing a bet? I blurted out my sadness before I knew it, and Vincent snapped back, irritated.
What did you say? I've been waiting patiently for your horse racing to finish because I have something to talk about. Why do I deserve to be spoken to like this? What have I done?
There was also the loneliness of not being paid attention to. When he was at home, he devoted his time to his hobbies, neglecting me completely. It became clear during this fight that he thinks providing money is enough to be with me.
Shut up. Stop chirping like a little bird. Talk to me when I'm in a better mood. When are you ever home for us to talk? You're always out on business entertaining, and when you are at home, it's all about you. What am I to you? I didn't get married just to be a housekeeper.
My pent-up feelings erupted. I had never raised my voice like this, but I couldn't bear Vincent's harsh words and attitude. When we were dating, he was devoted, treating me like a princess. He always put me first, acted lovingly, and cherished me. I spent days filled with love, thinking marrying him would lead to a happy marriage. That's why I accepted his proposal. Initially, our marriage was enviable. What a perfect husband, everyone would say. I thought our happy days would continue. But that only lasted the first 2 years. Then, his selfishness and tyranny became evident. Now, I'm treated no better than a housekeeper. I cater to his picky eating without complaint, clean like I'm shadowing my MIL, with strict checks as if not a speck of dust is allowed. One time, he even mocked me in front of relatives for not being able to have children. My mom had to intervene, but his harassment never stopped. When we were alone, how many times did he call me useless? I endured these humiliating days because of the memories of his kindness when we were dating. I was grateful for the love he once showed me, so no matter how badly he treated me, I could endure it with a smile. But now, what about him? The man before me seems like a completely different person from back then. He shouts at me on a whim, showing annoyance at my very existence. Why is he still living with me if he finds me so bothersome? I'd rather he just leave me than continue like this. As these sad thoughts crossed my mind, Vincent uttered unbelievable words. You've become so annoying. When we were dating, you'd do anything I said, and you were pretty cute, so I married you.
But I never expected you to become such a troublesome older lady after marriage. Being with you just irritates me. You're useless, can't even have kids. You're just like a housekeeper now." His words left me in despair, speechless. He doesn't see me as a woman anymore. I had suspected it, but hearing it directly from him was a shock, and I couldn't find words to respond. What were those 10 years for me? I devotedly supported him in his business, believing he loved me despite everything. I believed this rough patch would pass, and we'd return to happy days like before. I believed I was the most cherished woman to him. But now, he looks at me as if I was something inferior, annoyed by my presence. Is this the reward for supporting him for 10 years? If so, this is too cruel a treatment from God. My sadness turned to hatred, then to anger. "I'm tired of being with you." Vincent saw me clenching my fists, unable to speak. He sighed in annoyance, grabbed his cigarettes, and went outside. His wallet and mobile phone were in his pants, and I knew he wouldn't come back home that day. As expected, he didn't return home that night. I stared at the door he left through, dazed. The happy times, the moments I thought were joyful, they all flashed through my mind. Realizing I was alone, I cried out loud. This fight created a significant rift between Vincent and me. He seemed to dread even seeing my face, returning home only after I was asleep to grab a change of clothes and leave. I'm afraid of being hurt by his cutting words like that day. I too couldn't bring myself to talk to him. If he asked for a divorce now, I had nowhere to go, no place to return to. My parents passed away in a car accident right after I got married. When I lost them both within a year, I became like a shell of a person. Vincent was the one who supported me then, and at that time, I truly felt grateful to be married to him. Since then, Vincent was the only family I had. I had no other acquaintances to rely on. Except only my FIL and my L. But I couldn't bring myself to confide in Vincent's parents. They were kind to me, but no parent would be happy hearing such complaints about their son. I could even risk being disliked by them. Back then, I was too scared to take any action, a real coward. Maybe I was destined to live as a housekeeper by Vincent's side for the rest of my life. With these thoughts, I spent many nights crying myself to sleep. Then, after some time, Vincent unexpectedly returned home in a good mood. Despite not speaking for over 3 months, he came home while I was awake, carrying a box of shortcake as a peace offering. "Charlotte, this is for you."
"What is it?" His sudden change in demeanor caught me off guard, and I looked at him apprehensively. Vincent, noticing my wary gaze, smiled awkwardly and handed me the box of cakes.
"I've been wrong. I regret being so cold to you that day. I want to spend happy days with you again. Can we make up?" Seeing Vincent bow his head in apology made my tears flow. The kind Vincent I knew had returned.
I remember hugging him, filled with faint hope. True to his word, he started treating me with care again. He was as kind as when we were lovers, made an effort to come straight home, and prioritized spending time with me despite his busy schedule. We increased our time together as a couple.
The truth is, the company was struggling at that time. I was reckless and took out my frustration on you. I'm really sorry for making you feel bad.
One afternoon, while watching a movie on the couch, Vincent stroked my hair and shared his feelings from that time.
No, I'm sorry too. I shouldn't have blamed you without knowing the circumstances.
The air was finally clear between us. I thought we could start living happily as a couple again.
That belief lasted until a phone call came to Vincent's mobile phone.
One night during dinner. It was an unusual call from a woman's name. Vincent hurried to answer it, stepping outside as if he didn't want me to hear the conversation. Was it an important business contact? I thought so, but something felt off for the first time. Since the day we reconciled, Vincent had taken all his calls in front of me. The only exception was during our tumultuous rough patch. Back then, thinking about it now, Vincent persistently avoided making calls in front of me. A bad premonition crept up on me. So, when Vincent returned, I tried to coax the truth out of him.
It's unusual for you to take a call outside. Someone from work? Eh? Oh, yeah, something like that. Didn't I tell you about resigning as president and starting a new venture? It was about that, an employee consultation.
Vincent was planning to hand over his current real estate company to a trusted subordinate and take on the role of chairman, overseeing both his current and a new company.
Everyone seems anxious without me. They keep calling me for advice. A change in leadership is a big deal for a company.
Vincent talked more than usual, desperately trying to cover something up. It was clear to me. The word affair crossed my mind. Vincent was cheating on me behind my back. The moment I realized this, my love for him instantly cooled. That sounds tough. Don't overdo it. With this, I decided to thoroughly investigate Vincent's infidelity. Handling the monthly household budget efficiently, saving over $30,000. I managed to find a lawyer specializing in infidelity cases and immediately hired them. I also hired an investigator who confirmed that Vincent was cheating with a 20-year-old girl from his office.
Here are the documents summarizing their relationship.
The investigator handed me the report, and I was shocked to read it. Vincent had been in a relationship with this woman for over 5 years, with periods of separation. They had rekindled their relationship on the day he called her during our dinner. So that's why. The reason for our strained relationship was because things were going well between Vincent and this woman. He reached out to me for reconciliation only after being rejected by her. I was just a convenient piece for him. Realizing this, I decided to meet someone. Taking advantage of a weekend when Vincent was on a business trip, I headed to a specific location, determined to get my revenge. After a while, Vincent's new company was established, and he successfully stepped down as president. We had a lavish dinner at home to celebrate. Congratulations on your hard work, Mr. President. Managing 2 companies will be even more challenging, but good luck. Since then, our relationship had returned to the hellish atmosphere of our rough patch. His relationship with the other woman was going well again. The investigation revealed that Vincent's mistress was possessive and jealous, and he stopped treating me as a woman to avoid upsetting her and getting dumped. He deliberately created a cold atmosphere, using harsh words and actions to keep me at a distance. When irritated, he treated me like a punching bag. That's how he had been handling our relationship. All this was because his mistress, taking advantage of the fact I didn't use social media, exposed everything on hers. The investigator found it, and Vincent's and her thoughts were completely exposed. I had all the evidence I needed. Then, while I was thinking this, Vincent, with a cold gaze, let out a big sigh and handed me a piece of paper.
I don't want to eat your cooking. Wasting money on such things. Do you even realize who's allowing you to live like this? I wasn't giving you money each month for this nonsense.
Vincent glared at me furiously as he yelled. But his gaze didn't intimidate me at all. Looking at the paper he handed me, I saw it was a divorce application. I've found someone else. I want a divorce. Vincent announced the divorce as if it were the most natural thing, not showing any remorse. He probably thought that after the past 6 months, I would readily accept it. He probably thought that way. Though his thoughts were transparent, I chose not to say anything. Fine. Here, the divorce application. I quickly signed it and presented it back to him with the brightest smile. Vincent was astonished. Why are you agreeing so readily? He seemed to want to ask, but before he could, I started packing. I already knew he would present me the divorce papers today after seeing his mistress's social media post. All I had to prepare was a bag with my essentials. I'll arrange for the movers myself, and we can proceed with the rest through the lawyers. Goodbye. Ignoring Vincent's attempts to stop me, I quickly left the house. Despite the hellish life I endured, there were indeed happy moments. I decided to part ways with the home I shared with him and headed somewhere specific. The next day, I called the company where his mistress worked. She was a new employee at the headquarters where Vincent held his position. A mistake from a drinking party that turned into a relationship. She was 5 months pregnant, likely with Vincent's child. I decided to confront them with this shocking truth and summoned them.
Please come to the chairman's family home tonight. We need to discuss something. The time is.
I specifically named the mistress in the call, told her this much, and hung up without saying more, waiting for night to fall. At the appointed time, they arrived at the family home. Vincent, fuming, stormed in, having called the house repeatedly.
What's going on, Mom? Why didn't you answer the phone? What is this?
Entering the living room, Vincent immediately started berating his mother in a haughty tone. However, as soon as he and his mistress entered, they were shaken by the odd scene before them.
What do you mean, what?
Can't you see?
I thought we'd have a nice dinner with everyone. I've invited your relatives.
There, the representatives of the Henderson family were sipping tea, eagerly awaiting their return.
Hello, Vincent. It's been a while. You said you have something to tell us? Who's this lady? She looks pregnant. Don't you have a seat for her?
The relatives, unaware of the situation, asked. Amidst them, only the FIL and MIL remained reactionless, watching Vincent and his companion with a gentle smile.
Vincent, you have something to tell us about this lady, right?
It was Mael, Talia, who broke the silence. Talia, always kind and graceful, spoke softly, but her eyes were not smiling. Instead, they were shrouded in an almost frightening darkness, making Vincent shiver.
What do you mean, something to say?
No need to play dumb. We've heard everything from Charlotte. It was Fael, Keith, who delivered this blow to a faltering Vincent. In stark contrast to Talia, Keith looked at him sternly. The moment he heard Keith's words, Vincent glared at me in panic and spat out harsh words.
What have you done? You're no longer my DIL, so don't meddle in family matters. Not his DIL. What does that mean?
Vincent's outburst led the Henderson family to look at him curiously, voicing their questions.
He was unwittingly digging his own grave, an utter fool. To think I once fell for such a man made me nauseous.
As I watched in disbelief, Talia, now furious, spoke up.
How dare my son neglect such a good DIL and become infatuated with another woman? Shame on the Henderson family. Realize your foolishness.
Talia, in her suit, stood resolutely like the owner of a high-end restaurant, her presence overwhelming everyone. Her words must have been terrifying for Vincent. Overwhelmed by their presence, he stumbled backward and fell.
Thought you got away with an easy divorce?
Don't underestimate me. I've already spoken with Keith and Talia, explained the situation, and they've given me permission to claim alimony from you. They want to maintain a good relationship with me and said they'll disown you from the Henderson family. Approaching the frightened Vincent, I leaned down and whispered in a voice only he could hear, my expression menacing. That day, I bravely sought Keith and Talia, crying as I explained everything. As soon as I showed them the evidence, Keith bowed his head to me, and Talia offered support, saying I should always rely on them.
I never imagined my son would stoop to such disgraceful behavior. Thank you for telling us, Charlotte. You've endured so much pain.
Keith and Talia said, treating me kindly. For the first time in a long while, I felt the warmth of people's kindness. After that, both Keith and Talia were pleased to help with my plan. They informed the relatives who had celebrated our marriage about the situation and arranged for no one to side with Vincent. They had called everyone to ensure this.
Never come to this house again. I don't want to see your face. You're a disgrace.
Talia repeated many times. For Keith and Talia, who shared a loving relationship, infidelity was unthinkable. That their son had committed it was unforgivable. Oh, I almost forgot. As I turned to Vincent's mistress, who watched everything unfold in shock, she looked at me fearfully. I smiled reassuringly at her and handed her a medical report, revealing a shocking truth. That child isn't Vincent's. We already know. My bold statement shocked her, and Vincent too turned to us, confused and angry. Before our divorce, Vincent and I couldn't conceive, so we got tested. The results showed I was fine. The problem was Vincent. He was diagnosed with azoospermia. The medical report confirmed my words. How exactly did you conceive Vincent's child, then? I'd love to know how. Can you share that knowledge? My mocking tone visibly drained the color from the mistress's face. Vincent was enraged and started questioning to her, but Keith and the other men held him back. Through this, I successfully drove a wedge between Vincent and his mistress, leading to their breakup. The mistress ended up raising the child alone, and Vincent, now desperate, came begging me for reconciliation, which I promptly rejected. I claimed a substantial alimony in the divorce through my lawyer. Vincent, faced with the overwhelming evidence, was too disheartened to resist and complied with the lawyer's demands. Now, I work as an office clerk at the company run by Keith, helped by him and Talia. If there's anything we can do, just let us know, Keith said. You're not atoning for our son's sins. We truly think of you as our daughter, Charlotte, Talia added. Talia thanked me for having the courage to come to them, expressing deep gratitude. Despite your suffering, you've been so kind to us. We always looked forward to your letters and gifts, wondering when you would visit us again. She said, heaping my letters and pressed flowers in a cherished treasure box. If you don't mind, you can rely on us as much as you want from now on. Don't hesitate to think of this as your second home. Vincent, now disowned, was no longer allowed even to enter the Henderson home. After a month, he stopped trying to visit forcefully. Now that the turmoil has settled, I live with Keith and Talia. They offered me a home, concerned about me living alone.
Why don't you come and live with us as our adopted child?
They loved me so much that they even suggested adoption, and now I live happily with Keith and Talia as their true daughter.
Vivian's room looks different. Did you just realize that? Aren't you a bit slow? Or perhaps you're getting dementia. Please, don't be a nuisance to us.
Rocky and his wife, Ava, laughed as they saw me standing frozen in front of my own room. These people are devils. They're trying to drive me out of the house. I had a bad feeling about this since I arrived, and it turned out to be true. Ava's words made Rocky laugh with a sneer as well. However, they seem to be under one misunderstanding. They think the mortgage on this house is already paid off. If so, I must use this to my advantage. The disdain they show me will only last for now.
Are you really okay with this? Even if I'm gone? Of course. Did you think you were needed?
Their laughter will only last for now. My name is Florence, 54 years old. I gave birth twice in my early 20s and have gone through a divorce. I raised 2 sons as a single mother. My eldest son's name is Rocky, 30 years old. He's married with children. My granddaughter is truly adorable. Her name is Vivian. She just turned 3 and will enter preschool next year. Since my younger son, Joseph, has also left, I've decided to live freely and went ahead to buy a house. I finished raising my children relatively early, so I've been working hard. That's why I had some savings. However, due to a long period of being poor, I've gotten into the habit of saving. My sons didn't seem to know I had money when I bought the house, and both were surprised. I won't be a bother to you too. I can take care of myself. To this, Rocky said to me,
Mom, I have my own family now and can't take care of you. You need to act your age and not be a bother, okay?
Are these the words of a son I struggled to raise? More than sadness, I felt irritation at this moment. I won't be a bother. After all, I'm still young.
Young. Well, I won't get involved, just so you know.
Yes, yes. Probably, Rocky is preemptively saying he won't take care of me if I get dementia or become ill. I vowed to keep my body and mind healthy. I don't want to be taken care of by someone who says such things. Rocky has always had a not-so-great personality. Joseph is the silent type who doesn't say much. Harmless, but I've had my worries, and perhaps I paid too much attention to Joseph, making Rocky the type to cause trouble. It was cute when they were kids, but it's pathetic for an adult to keep saying unnecessary things. I wonder how he even got married. When he first said he wanted to marry someone, I almost cried. I was happy that someone would marry such a son. The first time Rocky brought home the woman who would become his wife. "Nice to meet you. My name is Ava." Ava was already looking around the house before greeting. At that time, we were living in a small apartment. It was quite old but well maintained, and I thought it was fine, but Ava's impression was different.
"Really, just as you said, an old house."
I couldn't believe my ears. To say such a thing when becoming part of the family was shocking. However, Rocky, without reprimanding her, just laughed.
"That's why I said, let's greet quickly and go back." "Wait a minute. I've prepared a meal." "No way. We can't eat in such a dirty place. We came here because you wanted to at least say hello. We're not staying for a meal."
Saying this, they left. I cried eating the leftover meal alone. It felt so empty and frustrated. I couldn't understand how someone could behave like that towards me at the first meeting. I only felt anger towards Rocky for not stopping her behavior. After the wedding, Rocky and Ava completely disappeared. They must be enjoying their life, I thought. I didn't want to meet Ava after our first impression, so it was a relief. One day, I received a message that they had a child. This was truly a joy. My first grandchild. I went to the hospital immediately and was happy when I held her. It was only for a short time, but it was a happy moment. Grandchildren are special, as they say, and she truly was. Her name seems to be Vivian.
Vivian.
When I called her name, she seemed to react a little. I must live long enough to see Vivian grow up properly. I remember making that resolution in my heart. But it wasn't easy to get to see her. I should have been prepared for it, but the reality of not being allowed to see her was sad. Hearing that Ava's parents were meeting her made it even more shocking. Perhaps, it's true that the parents on the woman's side are more likely to see their grandchildren. No, it's just that my relationship with my eldest son is particularly weak. But I wanted to see her at least once a year. With that slight hope, I made a call.
"Please don't come today because we're going out." "Then, when can I see you?" "It's been a year already. You don't need to see her, right? Ava's mom is enough to be Vivian's grandmother." "How can you say that?"
That was the first time I truly felt alone. Fortunately, I was working, so I could talk to my colleagues about it. Everyone sympathized, saying it was too harsh, and I felt rescued. One colleague advised me, now that I was alone, to forget about such a family and do things I had been holding back on. That might be a good idea. First, I wondered what to do and spent my days fretting alone at home. Then, I saw a feature on TV about someone who moved to a place rich in nature and started living a refreshed life. I decided that was it for me, switched to fully remote work, and bought a house in the suburbs. I informed my sons about it. Then, Ava showed interest and came over with Vivian. I was delighted with Vivian's unexpected visit. Changing my environment had immediately led to something good.
"This place would be good for Vivian's environment too."
I felt a sense of discomfort as she said that while looking around the house. Since then, Ava started coming over frequently, asking me to look after Vivian. Florence, you're happy to see Vivian, aren't you?
Yes, but isn't it too frequent? You were so eager to see Vivian. I'm fulfilling your wish, and now you're complaining?
Rocky and Ava spoke as if leaving their child with me was for my sake. Babysitting a few times a week turned into every day. I had hoped to enjoy my alone time, but this made it impossible. I was getting sleep-deprived balancing work and babysitting.
Florence, Vivian is here today too. Ava, I think I told you yesterday, but I'm a bit sick. Oh, I have plans to meet with friends today. It's too late now. Sorry, but you'll have to take Vivian with you. It's okay, your friends will understand. How irresponsible of you to say that.
I wanted to tell them how irresponsible it was to dump babysitting on me every day, but I was too sick to argue. In the end, Ava left for her outing and didn't come back until 10 p.m. Vivian was at an age where she wouldn't listen to me. It was really tough. That day, they came to pick her up just before 10 a.m. Taking advantage of my silence, late-night pickups became frequent. Sometimes, they even left Vivian to stay overnight.
Please, Rocky, talk to Ava. Huh? No way. After all, you seemed happy about it. I can't handle babysitting every day. I have work, you know? How selfish. You asked for this.
When did I ever wish for daily babysitting? It's a mystery. After that conversation, an incident occurred. Suddenly one morning, a moving company brought a ton of stuff.
What's going on? I didn't hear anything about moving.
We were worried about you and thought about living together with Vivian, so we decided to move. Rocky's family had decided to move in. And what audacity in their words. I firmly refused to live together, but I didn't want to trouble the movers, so we agreed to talk after the move.
It's impossible for 4 people to live here. It's fine. It's spacious enough. Besides, I like it here.
Ava sat back on the sofa as if it was her own house and said that to me. Vivian was caught between me and Ava, looking at us. So, I couldn't say anything more. I had dreamt of a free-spirited life alone, but now I was starting to live with Rocky's family. Despite being a housewife, Ava did no household chores.
I'm busy with childcare,
she said, making me prepare 3 meals a day. Of course, they didn't give me any money for groceries. If this continues, I'll just be doing whatever they say. Since being at home meant I'd be left with the babysitting duties, I started leaving the house early in the morning to go to work. Even though I had switched to remote work, I was commuting. Florence, weren't you supposed to be fully remote? Sorry, I'm just really busy right now. It was true that I was busy with work. I had been chosen to lead a new department that was being created. After a long day of overtime, coming home past 11 p.m., something seemed off about the room. I was too tired to think much of it and headed straight to my room.
What? This is...
Nothing of mine was left in my room, which was now overflowing with Vivian's things. Vivian was sleeping peacefully on the bed. It's turned into Vivian's room. Standing dumbfounded at the entrance, I heard laughter. Turning around, Ava and Rocky were standing side by side, smirking at me. I couldn't grasp the situation. Where are my things?
We got rid of them.
They had kept only the furniture and appliances they liked. Almost everything of mine was thrown away. Really? They hardly brought in any money. We tried selling them at a recycle shop, but were told they were in bad condition. It was embarrassing.
The little money we got from it, we'll keep.
That's when I realized. These two had been planning to drive me out of this house from the beginning.
You're out early in the morning and come back late. You don't need a house, do you? You're trying to kick me out? Did you just realize? Aren't you a bit slow? Or perhaps you're getting dementia. Please, don't be a nuisance to us.
This woman is a devil. How could someone do something so cruel? It's unimaginable. I gave up on staying and fighting with Ava and her cohort.
So, I should take this as you're kicking me out?
Yes. We'll be living here.
Think of it as your last act of filial piety and leave.
I hadn't received any filial piety. Why should I be the one to perform it? But I kept silent.
Are you really okay with this? Even if I'm gone? Florence, did you think we needed you? The most you were useful for was babysitting.
The next day, I left the house as if I was being driven out. I hesitated about going to Joseph's house, but considering his reserved nature and the possibility of him cohabiting with someone, it would be unfair to burden him. Reluctantly, I decided to stay in a business hotel near my workplace. That night, Ava and Rocky apparently celebrated driving me out.
Florence, you're not thinking of doing anything strange, are you?
Don't worry, she's thick-skinned. Alone in the business hotel, I pondered over my situation. The next day, I explained my circumstances to my company and took some time off. I was worried about causing trouble for my team, but my colleagues were very supportive, which comforted me.
The house, can you transfer it into my name?
Rocky called me with such a request right away.
I was actually about to contact you about that. You're sure you want to transfer it? Don't make me say it over and over. We talked about this when you left, didn't we? Hurry up. Understood.
I proceeded with the transfer as requested. A few days later, as expected, I received a call.
Florence, what is this about? Are you talking about the loan? You tricked us. Let's meet and talk this over.
Tricked them? They were the ones who drove me out. Knowing a confrontation was inevitable, I headed to Ava and Rocky's place. Vivian was left with Ava's parents. They were clearly ready for a fight.
Florence, who is this person?
A lawyer. I had brought a lawyer in case anything happened. Ava and Rocky were clearly surprised. Having a lawyer meant they couldn't manipulate the situation as they might have wanted. Their dismay was evident.
A lawyer? Why would you bring someone like that? Because you might make up some false accusations. It's better for both of us to have a third party present. Don't bring outsiders into this. If that's your attitude, then there's no point in talking. I'm leaving.
As I was about to leave, Ava nudged Rocky. Reluctantly, Rocky stopped me, and the discussion began with the lawyer present.
We didn't know there was still a loan to pay.
You drove me out, and now you're saying you didn't know.
Why are you laughing?
Ava stood up angrily. Rocky stopped her and pointed to a voice recorder on the table. Ava sat down again but glared at me the entire time. It was clear from her expression that she was furious.
The monthly payment for this house's mortgage is $1,800. Good luck paying it together. $1,800. Mom, how do you have so much money? After you two became adults, I started working more, cut down on living expenses, and began investing.
I never wanted my sons to feel poor just because they had a single mother. So, I endured personal hardships to ensure they didn't feel deprived, allowing them to do what they wanted within our means, even if we couldn't afford luxuries. That's why I honestly didn't have much savings. Then, a coworker advised me on the importance of saving for the future. Luckily, I was only 43 when I sent my sons off to college. I could work a lot. So, I started a side job, worked double, and increased my income. Once I had saved a bit, I invested it. After 10 years, I had accumulated a significant amount. After my sons were independent, I decided to use the money I earned for myself and boldly took out a mortgage to buy a house, only to have it taken from me.
Now that I've already transferred the ownership, you two will be responsible for the remaining mortgage payments. Since you took it upon yourselves to take over, it's your responsibility. That's not logical.
Ava's face turned red with rage. Then, the lawyer explained that I had no obligation to pay, and that disposing of someone's property could be a crime. He also mentioned that if they insisted on making me pay for a mortgage I wasn't living under, they could face legal action for that too. Rocky and Ava, not well versed in the law, started to panic. Clearly, they didn't want to go to court.
We understand. We'll figure out the mortgage on our own. Please don't sue us. Good, as long as you understand.
Ava grimaced in frustration.
By doing this, you're no longer a mother or anything to us. Don't ever show your face to us again.
Rocky hurled those words at me in a rage. Since moving out, I hadn't seen much of my son anyway. After all the unpleasantness and being driven out, I had no feelings left for Rocky. Feeling relieved at the thought of not having to see their faces again, I said,
I have no desire to see you again either, so this works out for me.
Rocky looked surprised when I said that, probably thinking I would never abandon him.
This wasn't supposed to happen.
I heard Rocky's voice as I left through the front door. Months later, Ava called to apologize.
Florence, I'm so sorry. Please come back. We can't possibly afford the payments. Even if you apologize, I'm not coming back. I've moved to a new house. Where is it? Can I come now?
I couldn't help but laugh. What is this woman so desperate for?
Ava, do you really think I'd tell you where I am? Please. We're going to be bankrupt at this rate.
That's not my problem. Besides, Ava could just work. It's wrong to rely on someone else without working yourself.
You could work. I have started working. But then Rocky got fired. What? Why?
That surprised me. According to Ava, Rocky had been working late for overtime pay. One day, he stole money from a coworker's wallet while they were in the bathroom.
Please don't report me to the police.
Rocky had begged his coworker. Even though it was just $50, the coworker didn't file a police report, but did report it to their boss, resulting in Rocky's dismissal. Ava was furious that Rocky had jeopardized their future.
What are you doing for just $50? Just work yourself. I am part-time. Get a full-time job. I have a child. Part-time work is more flexible.
They apparently argue like this almost daily. With Rocky unemployed, the mortgage payments weren't waiting.
I'm terrified of the payment due dates. I feel like I'm losing my mind. And you think it's okay to ask for help from someone you kicked out? You told me never to show my face again. So, I can't help you. That was just something Rocky said in the heat of the moment. Words said in haste can have irreversible consequences.
Ava fell silent. She seemed to be crying. She sounded truly desperate. But I have no obligation to help. I can become a devil too. Sorry, but please don't contact me again. If you do, I'll block your number. I said that and unilaterally ended the call. It was right after that, as I was leaving the office for lunch with my colleagues, Ava, Rocky, and Vivian were standing there. My colleagues quickly noticed and showed their concern for me. Go ahead without me, I told my colleagues and approached the three of them. What do you want? I was surprised at how cold my own voice sounded. Then Rocky began to apologize deeply.
Stop this, not here.
I took the three of them to a nearby bench. I didn't want Vivian to see her father apologizing so deeply to her grandmother. I was wrong. Please, help us.
One thing, didn't you say never to show up again?
That was. Rocky's ears turned red, likely from the shame of his actions. And damaging his own pride.
No need to apologize anymore. Just don't ever appear in front of me again.
Am I not your son anymore?
I don't consider you my son anymore. That's too harsh. Florence, that's really harsh.
Do you have the right to judge me? Ava fell silent. After being ridiculed, treated as a nuisance, used, and driven out by my own son, I couldn't think of him as my son anymore. I realized they didn't understand how much they had hurt me. Explaining it to them would be pointless. They wouldn't recognize the abnormality of their actions. It's better to let them face the consequences of their actions.
You're still Vivian's grandmother, right?
I expected this kind of turn when they brought Vivian. Vivian is innocent. But if being involved meant being used like this, I decided to give up on Vivian. Using Vivian won't work.
I won't extend my hand to you again, nor will I meet you. I plan to live in a different world now. But you said you wanted to see Vivian. Don't use Vivian. Solve your own problems. You brought this on yourselves. Are you okay being alone?
That must have been Rocky's last attempt. But I'm not alone anymore. I noticed my colleagues had come back and were standing behind me.
If I didn't have them, I couldn't have done anything about this situation. I'm not alone, so I'm strong.
Let's stop this. Rocky. I'm embarrassed. Rocky hung his head weakly. Ava, pulling Vivian's hand, left Rocky behind and walked away.
Well, our lunch break is almost over, so we're going. Goodbye.
Leaving Rocky behind, I left with my colleagues. Rocky seemed to stand there in a daze for a while, but was eventually escorted off the premises by security. Eventually, Rocky and Ava couldn't make the mortgage payments and fell behind. Ignoring the demand letters led to the financial institution demanding immediate full repayment. Panicked, Rocky and Ava consulted with the financial institution. The house was put up for auction. Due to its location, it didn't sell for the desired price. Maybe because I had customized it to my liking, which might have limited its appeal. Desperate to sell, Ava lowered the price on her own. It sold for about half of what it was purchased for. This left them with a substantial debt to pay off.
What have you done? You did this without consulting me. I thought it was better to sell it quickly. Why do you always act without thinking? This is why I can't stand people who haven't worked in society. What? I'm taking care of the child. If you helped a bit, I could work too.
Eventually, they were left with a large debt and no home. Their credit cards stopped working, and they couldn't get new ones. Unable to rent a house, they temporarily stayed with Ava's parents, who kicked them out because Ava didn't contribute to the household or work, using childcare as an excuse. Somehow, Ava's father managed to get them an old apartment, but a tough life awaited them. Ava's family refused to help any further. Ava's father even said not to come back until they had paid off their debts. Vivian ended up being taken care of at Ava's parents' house. I was worried about Vivian, so hearing that brought me relief. With Vivian gone and needing to work, Ava looked for jobs but couldn't find anything. So she ended up cleaning bathrooms at a shopping mall. There, she accidentally ran into a friend from her school days and was laughed at, leading to a humiliating experience. Ava came home crying, and Rocky's cold attitude only added to her stress. Rocky and Ava fought almost every day, often getting scolded by their neighbors because of the noise. Both of them actually wanted a divorce, but Rocky couldn't afford to lose his home, and Ava couldn't handle the debt repayment on her own. When they looked into divorce once, they found an article saying debts could be divided, which made them give up on the idea. Ava had no one to consult with, so she relied on internet articles. These messages were left on my mobile phone's voicemail. After they contacted me again, I decided to block their numbers. Rocky and Ava are still burdened with a huge debt, working every day for repayment. They must regret taking over my house, but it's too late for regrets now. As for me, after staying in a hotel for a few days, I received a call from Joseph out of the blue. He had moved and was calling to give me his new address. When I told him about what had happened for the first time, he was very upset that I hadn't consulted him and invited me to stay at his place. What surprised me was how spacious it was. I knew Joseph had started a business, but I wasn't aware of the details. The company had grown enough to afford a house without me realizing. Now, I'm enjoying my time living with Joseph. He's about to get married, so I'll have to move out. But he surprised me by gifting me a house next to his. He apologized for it being a small house. But I loved the design, it was exactly to my taste. I never knew you understood me so well. I was moved because I thought the reticent Joseph wasn't interested in me. A few days later, I met his fiancée, who was wonderful. She welcomed me living next door. They also welcomed me to live next door. Actually, it was her idea to build the house next to theirs. I'm looking forward to my new home and the new family next door. Even though I lost Rocky, experiencing Joseph's kindness has made me happy.
Unthinkable to ask for food money. Taking money from your family is shameful, you should realize that.
As my son's wife shouted, glaring at my husband and me, I thought to myself that what's truly unthinkable is her behavior. Unthinkable indeed, you fool. People say your daughter-in-law is a stranger, and it couldn't be more true. Such a brazen woman, she's not part of my family. The one who silenced my daughter-in-law was a single remark from our beloved grandchild. I am Lily, a 65-year-old housewife. I've been married to my husband Thomas for 40 years. We have 2 sons, both of them have their own families now. My eldest son, Michael, lives nearby. He has an 8-year-old daughter, but we rarely see her due to her busy school schedule. However, the last person you want to see is often the one who shows up uninvited. Lily, do you have anything you don't need? I'll take it off your hands. The loud one at the front door is Michael's wife, Emma. I've disliked her ever since my son married her. Looking back, she was always a bit off. She boldly asked about my husband's salary and our savings.
Emma, you shouldn't ask such things, even to family. It can upset people.
I once said to her, in a lecturing tone. Eh?
Why not?
We're family. My parents tell me everything.
Oh, by the way, they said they hardly have any savings.
Seeing her laugh, I felt drained. Later, my younger son's wife said,
Lily, I need to talk to you about my sister-in-law.
The content was unbelievable. At that time, she was struggling to conceive and was undergoing treatment.
Why don't you have kids? You should have them while you're young, it gets harder as you get older.
Such meddling made her neurotic. Even when Michael scolded his wife, she showed no remorse.
I was just giving advice as a mother,
she defiantly claimed. But after successful treatment, a grandson was born to my younger son. Then, this time, Emma sent a message.
Just because you had a boy doesn't mean he's the heir, right? My daughter is the first grandchild and the eldest son Michael's child.
To the second son's wife soon after giving birth. This incident caused my younger son's family to move away, reducing our meetings to a few times a year. Children grow up watching their parents, and looking at Emma's parents, it might not be entirely false. My husband sighed deeply. Emma's parents, living in the countryside, were equally strange. Every year at Thanksgiving, we send gifts to those who've been kind to us, including Emma's parents. One year, I received a phone call from Emma's parents.
Hello?
I was taken aback. So, the assortment of sweets and towels is fine, but we were thinking meat would be better, right? What is she talking about? It's the thought that counts, and besides, we've never received a Thanksgiving gift from Emma's parents. Yet, they had the audacity to say such things. I was hesitant, but when I told Michael about the call, he immediately scolded his wife. I should have told you what they like. Sorry. Next year, please send them their favorite things. I was stunned by her audacious response.
Emma, that's not the point. We sent those gifts with love, but both my husband and I felt very offended. We never receive anything from your parents, so we'll refrain next year. We don't want to impose,
I said and abruptly hung up the phone. Emma's causing friction in our family. She's odd, we should keep our distance. But contrary to my wishes, when my granddaughter Aria started elementary school, Michael's family moved close to our house. This house will be well taken care of by our family. Lily, you and your husband can comfortably move into a home for the elderly. When she said this with a smile, both my husband and I were speechless. In essence, she meant they wouldn't care for us but would take the house. We didn't expect care from them, especially not from Emma. But living nearby meant we'd frequent use the same supermarket. When I go shopping, there's an 80% chance I run into Emma. Oh? Lily, are you shopping too? What a coincidence, so am I. Emma says this, but I'm not a fool either. She must have seen me leaving our apartment for the supermarket. And her goal was clear, just one thing. These, I saw on TV. They were delicious. This is also recommended. And this too. She would unceremoniously add items to my shopping cart. I live with just my husband, we can't eat all of these. Even I put things back, she'd quickly return them to my cart, saying, "It's fine, I'll take them, don't worry about it." Fine for what? I thought, but with neighbors and friends working at the supermarket, I couldn't raise my voice. After I paid, she brazenly opened the packages as if they were her share and stuffed them into plastic bags, then into her own shopping bags. Even with a 10-pack of eggs, she'd say, "You can't eat all these, right? I'll take some." And open the pack herself. That finally made me angry. I use eggs every day, it's okay. Please give them back. And this meat too, I'll freeze any leftovers. When I said this, Michael and Aria both love eggs. I want them to eat a lot. And meat too. But, Michael's salary has been cut recently. She showed a visibly downcast appearance. Looking at her shopping bag, it was mostly discounted items. Because of her loud voice, other shoppers looked at us strangely. On a day I didn't encounter her at the supermarket, a neighbor working there stopped me to say, "Can't you do something about your son's wife? Asking for more discounts, not listening when we say we don't put sale stickers on items in the cart." Her embarrassing behavior made me feel like my face was on fire. Give me a break. My head's going to explode. Most of my conversations with my eldest son Michael became about his wife. That weekend, Michael and his unusually serious-faced wife Emma came over. As soon as she entered the room, "Lily, I got too comfortable thinking we're family. I'm sorry for the trouble at the supermarket. I'll refrain from such embarrassing behavior from now on." Is this really the same woman? She seemed genuinely remorseful. I later learned from my son that they had a serious fight. He threatened divorce if there wasn't an improvement, which seemingly changed her attitude. Life was peaceful for a while. But people don't change that easily. After that, I felt awkward using the supermarket, so I started ordering groceries online. Then, my son's wife began bringing my granddaughter Arya to visit regularly.
Grandma, I drew this.
She showed us a well-drawn picture. Oh my. Arya, your colored pencils are quite short, I remarked. I want to buy her new pencils, but things are tough. Sorry, Arya. Emma interjected. Seeing this, my husband took out his wallet. Here, buy Arya some new pencils with this. And gave her a small amount of money. She continued visiting, saying Arya's shoes were too small or she needed new clothes, always appealing to us. Sometimes she'd boldly enter our kitchen and ask, "Do you have anything you don't need?" Hey, is Michael's company really struggling that much? And if life is so hard, why doesn't Emma work? She's been a housewife since marriage, at home during the day. My daughter-in-law, Emma, has been a housewife ever since she got married, and seen to be at home during the day. If she could use that time for part-time, her life would be a little easier. My husband and I often discussed this. That's the point. Then, out of the blue, my eldest son's family came over.
We're thinking of moving in here.
A completely unexpected proposition. My husband and I exchanged glances. Sorry to spring this on you, Dad, Mom. Emma suddenly started insisting on living together. See, you got your way. Let's go home. My son tried to take her home, but she stubbornly refused, and it was getting nowhere. My husband, having had enough, said, "If you're that insistent, we won't ask for rent. But you'll have to split the food costs with us. We're living on a pension, after all." Then, she stopped in her tracks.
It's unthinkable to ask for food money. Taking money from your family is shameful, you should realize that.
She came back with an outrageous response. Aren't you the one who should be embarrassed? And then,
if that's how you feel, then we are done as of today. And of course, I'll never let you see Arya again.
I watched her fury in silence. Thinking back, ever since she came into our lives, I've never had a day of peace. I've tolerated her because she's my eldest son's choice, but now I've reached my limit. I'll only cut ties with her alone and secretly ask Michael to let us meet our granddaughter. When I was thinking this,
hey, what does disowning mean? Like, not seeing each other anymore? If that's the case, I want to disown Mom.
Everyone was shocked by my granddaughter Arya's words.
Eh? Arya, what are you saying?
Especially Emma, who looked astonished.
Because, Mom, do you know what my friends call you? The beggar. Sometimes they laugh at me, and I don't want to go to school. The one who's embarrassing is you.
Arya's face looked like she was about to cry. Apparently, Emma had been making begging attacks on the parents of Arya's friends too.
Besides, you buy things you like, but my clothes and shoes are old. You said you'd buy me new colored pencils, but you never do.
Hearing this, I asked,
Eh? What do you mean? We gave you money to buy Arya colored pencils, didn't we? I can't believe it, but did you use it for yourself?
My eldest son's wife made an uncomfortable face and replied,
No. I used it for living expenses. It's hard to get by on just Michael's salary.
My son immediately said,
What money? And you always say that, so I've been working hard. I've been promoted twice since we got married. How much do you need to be satisfied? Or is this about divorce? I told you, if you cause any more trouble for my family or others, there won't be a next time. Above all, you've hurt Arya. You're a failure as a mom.
With his cold words, Emma's eyes filled with tears.
But I can't help it. We were poor growing up. I couldn't have what I wanted. Now I'm an adult. I want to eat and buy what I like. What's wrong with that?
To her crying hysterically, I said,
Don't be ridiculous. Making your child suffer while satisfying your own desires is just an excuse. I have no blood relation to you, and I would have welcomed a good daughter-in-law, but honestly, I only care about Michael and Arya. A foolish woman like you, I disown you."
And with that, she was taken back home by Michael. She probably thought living in our house would save on living expenses. What a joke. We decided to take care of our granddaughter Arya for a while. Because Emma had said,
"You're an ungrateful child for repaying kindness with ingratitude,"
to her daughter. Thinking she is doing her child a favor just shows she is finished as a mom. Emma insisted on not divorcing, but my son ignored her and forcibly sent her back to her parents' home. Of course, we got many calls from her ridiculous parents, but we ignored them all. The divorce wasn't easy and went to mediation. But thankfully, my son got custody. That's because her arguments were terrible, all about wanting to stay a housewife and not wanting to divorce, with no thought for Arya. Also, my son hadn't told us, but he had been living a repressed life, documented in his diaries. It was also discovered that Emma had been secretly saving a lot of money in her own bank account, which worked in my son's favor regarding the distribution of property. Honestly, I didn't want to give that woman a cent. My son Michael and granddaughter Arya moved out of their apartment to live with us.
"Arya, I'm so sorry for making you feel lonely with all my work. I'm really happy you want to live with me."
My son was crying with happiness. Arya looked a bit shy. I thought peaceful days were finally here, but then, a few months later, some unwelcome visitor started ringing our doorbell incessantly while my son was at work and my granddaughter at school.
"What?"
Looking at the monitor, I saw an unexpected figure.
"What do you want? Everything's been settled, right?"
Opening the door, there stood Emma, my former daughter-in-law, and her parents, faces filled with anger.
"Settled? Don't be ridiculous. Why haven't you paid child support?"
Emma's mom's words confused us.
"Excuse me? We're raising Arya here. If Emma were to pay, maybe, but why should we?"
My husband glared at the three of them, baffled. Then Emma's dad said,
"Emma has no income after the divorce. For the time being, your son should be taking care of her. That's why he needs to pay child support for Emma."
Behind her parents, my ex-daughter-in-law looked at me triumphantly. We couldn't help but laugh at such ridiculous statements.
You might want to look up what child support means. How old is your daughter? All I see is a healthy adult woman over 30. Did you really pay travel expenses just to come here and say something so foolish?"
Following me, my husband added,
"What you're doing is extortion. Now that we're divorced, we're strangers. We won't hesitate to call the police next time. To be honest, I've never once considered you family."
He then pulled out his mobile phone. Seeing this, they panicked.
"Police? That's ridiculous. We're leaving."
And they left hastily, almost fleeing. Watching them go, we mused.
Those parents seemed normal until the marriage, but you really can't understand people. Child support for a wife? Never heard of such a thing. That woman, crazy till the end.
We laughed for a while, remembering their foolish faces. Apparently, Emma's family was struggling financially. Unbeknownst to us, they had been recipients of TANF for years, receiving it under the pretense of the dad's mental illness. However, it was revealed as fraud following an anonymous tip. They were all healthy, they should have been working. It's infuriating to think such people were getting money meant for those truly in need. They were working and paying fines for a while, but people don't change easily. They were arrested for theft a few months later. They're strangers now, but I hope they continue to struggle. As for us, we've been living peacefully as if it was all a lie. Arya has brightened up and brings friends home more often. Furthermore, my younger son's family decided to move back here for his job transfer. I've been in touch with my daughter-in-law.
"Lily, please teach me cooking again. My son is thrilled that he'll get to see everyone more. And he's so excited to play with his cousin Arya after we move."
Looking back, I saw the grandchildren playing happily together, a smile naturally forming on my face. Then, 3 years after the divorce, my son Michael remarried. Her name is Elizabeth, introduced by a friend. She was mistreated by her ex-husband and his family for not being able to have children. Elizabeth is kind and gentle, getting along well with my younger son's wife. Above all, I miss my grandchild Arya very much, and we prepare meals together.
Arya shyly called me mom for the first time the other day. I thought I would never be able to be mom, so I was so happy.
Elizabeth teared up as she told me. I gently patted her back. I'm truly happy that someone as kind-hearted as you became Michael's wife and Arya's mom. Thank you, Elizabeth. Soon, my son's family will move to a new home. Not too far from here. Michael and Arya had a hard time with his ex-wife, but with Elizabeth, they'll surely have peaceful days. My husband and I are planning to start a small garden when we're alone. It seems we'll be able to spend our old age in peace. Thinking about this, I savored our current happiness.
I want a divorce.
Fine, but I'm not paying any alimony in a divorce trial, you know? You don't work, so you must not have any money. Are you okay with that? More than money, protecting my own happiness is much more important. I don't want to stay in this house, nor do I want to live with this man. I'll definitely divorce and make you regret it. My name is Carolina. I was born and raised in the countryside, 58 years old, and picking mountain vegetables becomes my hobby when the weather gets warm. I love the peaceful countryside air, but there was a time in my life when I resented being from the countryside. Back then, I was in my 20s. After graduating high school, I got a job at a local department store, a position only offered to top students. I believe I lived a more glamorous life than others my age. Then one day, my boss said,
"A VIP customer is coming."
And I was assigned to assist a certain individual. That was my husband, Louis. Louis's family had produced a member of parliament, and even though Louis's direct family wasn't in politics, they were a well-known local business family. As the eldest son, Louis was set to inherit the family business and had significant influence locally. However, in the larger scope, their business was just one of many competitors. In the city, they would probably be overshadowed. Yet, in our area, Louis was something like a local king. But it was this assignment in the store that led to Louis taking a fancy to me. People around me said things like,
"Marrying a rich man, you're so lucky, your future is secure." But I wasn't happy at all.
Louis's family, the Warners, had a lot of bad rumors because of their influence locally. Arrogant, quick to fire employees they didn't like, secretly dating several pretty female employees. How much of it was true, I, a recent high school graduate, couldn't tell. But where there's smoke, there's fire. There must be some truth to the issues they faced. Louis's approach was persistent, no, passionate, and he often waited in his car outside my workplace until I finished work. He gave me bouquets, treated me to dinners at fancy restaurants, various ways of showing his affection. However, as I talked more with Louis, I started to think. Despite all the rumors about his family, maybe he's a serious and good person? So, I started dating him, and eventually, we got married. Right after our marriage, my in-laws gifted us a house. They said it was a wedding present. I was used to more modest wedding gifts, so it surprised me. Louis accepted it as if it were normal. I realized then that we lived in different worlds. I never imagined that this house would turn out to be akin to a devil's dwelling. After moving in with Louis, his mother, Catherine, started visiting our home frequently. Mostly without a specific reason, I just had to listen to her complaints about my father-in-law, Hector, all day. Apparently, Catherine had many issues with Hector. He doesn't pay attention to her, isn't grateful, even the argument they had 10 years ago. There's no end to Catherine's unpleasant stories. Not only about Hector but also about the family driver's way of speaking, the attitude of the company secretary, even the neighbor's clothing. She found something to complain about in everything. It was stressful having to listen to these stories every time. Even it would be still acceptable if you're helping with a family business, it's a disgrace to work outside as a Warner family daughter-in-law. As she said so, I had quit my job at the department store after getting married, so I had no way to avoid her frequent visits. Initially, she visited mostly on weekdays when Louis was away, but gradually she started coming over on weekends too. That probably wasn't good. Even though we were newlyweds, Louis began spending more time away from home. Catherine doted on him. Regarding our marriage, she had said,
"I wouldn't have allowed it if she wasn't a woman I approved of."
And there were quite strict conditions for a marriage partner. I wasn't highly educated, from a good family, or skilled in household chores as she wanted, but my ordinary face and knowing my place were preferred. A son's wife shouldn't be opinionated, always walk behind the men of the Warner family, it seems. Perhaps because I wasn't too flashy, my ordinary face was favored. My demeanor. I was just scared to speak with someone from a powerful family, but they took it as knowing my place. Thanks to that, now I can't say, "Catherine, I've heard this complaint from you before." Half a year into the marriage, Louis hardly came home, and I started to wonder if I married him or Catherine. Then, his affair was discovered. One night, when he returned home in a company car, I accidentally witnessed from the window him kissing a woman in the back seat before parting ways. The driver didn't seem particularly flustered. As soon as they finished their exchange, the driver smoothly drove off, as if accustomed to their affairs.
"Hey! What was that just now?"
Naturally, I confronted Louis, who entered the house with a calm face. I couldn't forgive infidelity less than a year into our marriage, especially after such a passionate pursuit before marriage. However, his reaction was completely different from what I expected. "Don't make a fuss over one or two women. Instead, prepare dinner." I was speechless at his attitude, untying his tie and heading to the living room. He wasn't even trying to hide it, but rather being defiant.
"Wait. Explain. Who was that woman?"
"You're noisy. She's a woman from the company. A new employee, I'm just looking after her."
"You're a high-ranking official. You're not in a position to look after new employees. What kind of care are you providing?"
"Enough, I'm tired. Be quiet." With that, he forcefully shook off my hand. I was pushed hard on the shoulder and fell to the floor. Calm down. I'm displeased, I'm taking a shower." Leaving me with a cold gaze, he really went to take a shower. The sound of the shower echoing in the room felt emptily surreal, and I deeply regretted marrying such a person. The next day, Catherine, as usual, came to our house and spoke to me in a clearly bad mood. "Carolina, sit down there." "What?" Confused, I was forcibly pushed to the floor by the secretary who entered the room with her.
"What is this about?"
"You yelled at Louis yesterday, who was tired from work, didn't you? Is that what a wife does?"
"How do you know that?" "But that's because I saw him kissing a woman in front of the house. It's natural to ask what that was about."
"I was told by him to warn you. Honestly, as a Warner family woman, you should turn a blind eye to one or two outside women."
"Are you saying I should tolerate infidelity and pretend not to see it?"
"Great men in the past had many women. That's what it means to have power. I can't accept this. This family is really strange."
"That's it. I'm divorcing Louis."
Saying it out loud made me tear up for the first time. Despite everything, I did love Louis. I never imagined choosing to leave him in such a manner on our wedding day, but
"There's no way I'll allow that. What nonsense are you talking about?"
I involuntarily shrank back at Catherine's furious demeanor. After a heavy sigh, Catherine took out her mobile phone and made a call to somewhere. "Hi, yes, sorry Hector. Could you come home for a moment, is it okay now?" "Yes, understood." As soon as she hung up the phone, she glared at me and said, "We're going to our house." Despite my resistance, I was forcibly dragged by the secretary, put in a car, and taken to my in-laws' house. Or more precisely, to the barn of my in-laws' house. Shortly after our arrival, Hector, father-in-law, also appeared. It seems he was the one Catherine had called earlier. "Carolina, you said you wanted a divorce?" Hector sneered at me. "Yes. I'm sorry, but that's not acceptable. We can't have a scandal of a Warner family man being left by his wife."
"I don't care about that.
Just as I tried to argue back, he grabbed my hair. "Listen, what I and Louis say is absolute. You have no right to refuse. Understand that until you calm down." Saying this, he roughly let go of my hair, and I staggered backward. "Let's go," Hector commanded. "Just do your duty." Catherine left these words behind and walked out of the barn with Hector. Hearing the sound of the key, I realized I was locked in. Panicking, I banged on the door and screamed to be let out, but someone who seemed to be the secretary said through the door, "I'm afraid that's not possible," and then ignored me completely. 12 hours later, locked in the hot and humid barn, I was on the verge of dehydration when I was finally released. Exhausted, Catherine asked me, "Have you calmed down?" and handed me a bottle of water. Drinking the water hastily made me feel sick, and I was too exhausted to think. Far from calming down, I couldn't think of anything. Led by Catherine into the house, I saw Louis and a woman next to him. "Have you reflected?" "Carolina, I'm willing to forgive you if you have. I still like you." Seeing his smiling face made my spine chill. "No, I can't have a conversation with this person. And, starting today, this lady will live with us too. This is Lisa. Get along." Looking at the woman, I vaguely remembered the scene. This woman was the one he was kissing.
"What are you thinking? Why do I have to live with your affair partner?"
Hey, are you saying you have a problem with that?"
"Of course I do. This is weird, this house is wrong, not just you, Catherine and Hector too, everyone."
The atmosphere in the room froze with my words. But I didn't think I was wrong at all.
"How dare you? To disrespect not just Louis but Hector too."
Catherine's anger was calmed by Louis saying, "It's okay. You said you wanted a divorce? Do you know what will happen to you and your family if you divorce?" His cold gaze met my defiant stare.
"I'll take you up on that, let's get divorced."
"Fine, but I won't pay any alimony in a divorce trial, you know? You don't work, so you must not have any money. Are you okay with that?" Louis smiled creepily. He thinks threatening me with money will make me return. It must have always been like this.
"Even so, please divorce me."
As I answered, Louis sighed and instructed Lisa, "Take the paper in the back right of that drawer." Lisa stood up, took a paper from the drawer as instructed, and handed it to him. "Here. Dad said to threaten women with this when necessary. My part is already filled out. Use it as you like." The paper handed to me was a signed divorce application, just as he said. "Good, I'll proceed with this immediately and cut ties with this house. If you regret it, it's not my problem," he said, to which I replied firmly, "I won't regret it, I'm sure." Dragging my weakened body, I headed to the courthouse. Wait. With such a dirty look, even if you're pretending to be someone else, if a woman from the Warner family is seen walking outside at night, it'll be a shame, so use our car. I'll provide a driver for you. Hector's words made me visibly frown. Are they planning to lock me in the car and take me somewhere? Then, at that moment, the secretary, Casey, "I'll do it," raised her hand to volunteer. She had been accompanying me on shopping trips ever since I got married. He then ordered Casey, "Then you go." Trusting Casey, I got into the car and submitted the divorce papers. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected call from Louis. The first thing, he shouted,
"Don't mess around."
"What's the matter?" All of a sudden,
"Don't play dumb. You're the culprit. Because of you, we're losing business partners. What are you going to do about it?"
That's exactly what I wanted. I'm glad to hear that. Irritated by my laughter,
"I'll destroy your family's home,"
shouted Louis. Actually, when I submitted the divorce papers. Please use this. Casey handed me a pen in the car. Inside it was footage of me being lectured by Catherine about Lewis's infidelity, being forcibly taken to the car by a male secretary, and then locked in the barn. It also included the moment Lewis said he wanted to live with his mistress. Casey's sister was almost forced to become Hector's mistress and was fired from the group company when she refused. Casey and her sister had different last names due to their parents' divorce, so no one realized they were sisters. She had been waiting for a chance for revenge, always carrying a pen-shaped mini camera in her breast pocket just in case. Your treatment by Carolina was too harsh. I like you because you're kind and always thank the secretary. This should keep your family safe. Feel free to use it as you wish. Please take it with you, she said, entrusting me with the data. With this perfect material, I contacted a friend who worked at a publishing house to expose the reality of that house. I had planned to do this after the divorce anyway, but I was thankful to have evidence of the terrible treatment I received. I sold the data to a magazine, and the ruthless reality of the family was spread not only in magazines and newspapers but also on social media. Considering they were a family that had produced a member of parliament, even though they weren't a major corporate representative, the scandalous nature of the story attracted public attention as expected.
Basically, you exposing dad and mom's affair. What do you want to do?
I'm exposing all the misdeeds of your family. If there's any power left in your family, I would have been completely destroyed along with my family, right? I just took up arms to protect my family. Got a problem with that? I had heard from Catherine's complaints every day that she actually has a lover. Initially, it started with Hector's infidelity, and as revenge, Catherine also cheated. Catherine, at 68 years old, had a lover in his 20s. She was quite smitten, apparently showering him with gifts. Catherine said, "If it weren't for the ties to this house, we would have been married long ago." But frankly, to the lover, Catherine was probably just a wallet. Catherine's history of affairs wasn't just with this man, apparently. There were many others in the past. While she claimed it was revenge against Hector, Catherine seemed to enjoy it just as much. It was mutual.
Because of you, Dad is even saying he'll divorce Mom. It's your fault.
I thought Warner family members weren't allowed to divorce. If your dad can't endure it anymore and easily changes his opinion, that's pretty small-minded.
Shut up. The person who caused this shouldn't be acting so high and mighty.
The cause, don't make me laugh. It's your parents who messed up with their constant affairs, and you for cheating, leading to our divorce.
What will you do if this house falls apart? I'm the only one inheriting this house and company. If it continues like this, everything. I'll lose everything.
Lewis's voice gradually turned to tears. It's his fault, so I wish he wouldn't cry so pathetically. Duh. If you care so much about your family and company, why not just pull yourself together and rebuild them if they collapse? Don't you have any thoughts of starting over? It's unattractive to be unable to do anything unless you're at an advantage from the start.
Shut up. A commoner like you couldn't possibly understand what it feels like for me, who has been burdened with the expectations of being an heir since childhood, to have my promised future taken away.
Do you really think you were the only one expected to be an heir?
Of course.
Well, yes, you're the only decent son.
What do you mean? I'm an only child, you know that.
No, you have an older half-brother with a different father.
What? Don't lie. What are you talking about?
After our divorce, I hired a private detective who was an acquaintance of my parents. Your family is so well known that I didn't even need a detective to find all sorts of information.
An older brother for me? Don't joke. I've never heard such a thing.
As he was infuriated, I patiently explained to him about the existence of his brother. But it's true. Your family's former housekeeper, Joanne, you know her, right? Hector had a child with her. He was speechless at my words. Joanne, she. He was clearly interested in the familiar name I mentioned over the phone. Well, he never acknowledged the child legally because my legal wife doesn't have children yet. Catherine, who was newly married at the time, was very against it. Catherine had you, but Hector preferred Joanne's child, whom he had first. He even told people he wanted that child to inherit the family business. Eventually, that didn't happen, and reluctantly you were born as the heir. Your family is like a drama, really. At this point, Louis whispered, "That can't be true," in a small voice. But unlike before, his tone conveyed that he didn't think my story was false. Now, here's the question. Huh? Louis reacted with an obviously displeased voice when I suddenly started joking. Who really carries the blood of the Warner family? What do you mean? You are the child of Catherine's affair. What? When she found out about Joanne's pregnancy, she got back at Hector by getting pregnant with a man who was a driver at the time. That child was you. That's impossible. It's true, Hector didn't notice, but my investigation found people who knew about Catherine and your real father at the time. No. That's a lie. I'm the only heir to this house. Otherwise, what was all my effort for? Louis wailed like a child throwing a tantrum. That's why the real heir is Joanne's child. Not a drop of Hector's blood in you. If you doubt it, do a DNA test yourself. Well, it will be interesting to see what you, a stranger by blood, will do with that irredeemable house from now on. Good luck, bye-bye. I couldn't hide my smile as I cheerfully said goodbye to him and hung up the phone. Louis must have been shocked, he stayed silent. Then, my leak sparked other magazines to talk about Louis's family scandal. It was revealed that Louis was not of the Warner blood, Hector's tax evasion, and Catherine's verbal abuse to the driver. My plan worked faster than I thought. Louis's family fell into decline, closing all their businesses. Locally known as the no-good family, they fled the town and dispersed, now living modestly. While the relatives live modestly, Louis struggles to find a job due to his widespread exposure in magazines. He tried to command his former subordinates to find him work, but no one listens to a powerless Louis. His actions ended up in magazines, leaving him unemployed. Hector and Catherine divorced, entangled in disputes over alimony from the divorce. It was an ugly family till the end. As for me, I asked to be rehired at the department store where I worked before marriage. After that, I focused on my career, advancing smoothly. When I reached a certain age, I attended a middle school reunion and met a classmate attending for the first time in his 40s. He was not good at socializing and a man of few words. But his unpretentiousness was exactly what I found appealing and trustworthy. Thanks to that, my second marriage is going very well. The first marriage was full of struggles, but because of that, I learned to be discerning. Being single for a while allowed me to meet my current husband. In a way, my life hasn't been a waste. I even feel a little grateful to Louis. That's how I feel now.
My friend always says, "Oops, I left my wallet at home," whenever we go out, expecting me to foot the bill. It bothers me that my husband had an idea. So I invited her out, pretending I forgot to buy something. We left the place, and now we're trying out our plan. I hope it works. My name's Addison, and I'm 34 years old. I work part-time while my husband Johnny brings in a good income. Our little family, including our 4-year-old son Cliff, lives comfortably. We recently upgraded from an apartment to a house after saving up some money. That's when I met Susanna, a fellow mom in the neighborhood. She's raising her husband's stepchild, which I found intriguing. Eager to befriend her, I soon realized that Susanna had quite the personality. Despite not knowing her well, we welcomed her into our lives. Today, after my son's gym class, I decided to join in, hoping to integrate into the community. It went well, and I made friends with other local moms who invited me for lunch. We grabbed sandwiches and coffee at a nearby cafe when suddenly Susanna appeared out of nowhere. "Addison, what a coincidence! Are you here for a tea party?" she exclaimed loudly, joining our table without hesitation. We exchanged uncertain glances, but couldn't turn her away, so we ended up having lunch with Susanna. As we were finishing up lunch, we started discussing splitting the bill. Then Susanna chimed in, "Since I just happened to be here, I don't need to pay, right?" We exchanged glances, knowing exactly what was happening. Susanna's habit of dodging payment was rearing its head again. Plus, I didn't order anything, so it wouldn't make sense for me to pay, she argued. We sighed at her reasoning. She always found excuses to avoid paying her share. But Susanna,